Chapter 613. However, his smile only lasted for less than a second before it disappeared. After the seventh gate of wonder was lifted, an indescribable feeling of exhaustion flooded his body, almost making him unable to maintain a standing posture. Although he has the sage body, the Hashiman Tanku is a physical technique that consumes a lot of energy. After standing motionless for a few seconds, he controlled the little chakra left in his body and returned the flying thunder god to his room. Then he went to the sofa in the living room and lay down regardless of his image. While lying on the sofa to recover his strength, he began to recall the relevant information about Shinra Tensei and Chibaku Tensei in his mind. After awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan, it will take the initiative to awaken the dojutsu that suits it. The Rinnegan also has similar characteristics. However, unlike the Manjikyu Sharingan that can only awaken one dojutsu, the awakening ability of the Rinnegan is not limited to a single eye. One Rinnegan or two Rinnegan can awaken three universal abilities. Shinra Tensei symbolizes repulsion, Wansho Tensei symbolizes gravity, and Chibaku Tensei symbolizes the ultimate control of gravity. At this time, although Rog only opened one Rinnegan, and it hasn't been long since he opened it, but at the moment when the Rinnegan opened, he knew that at this time, he can already skillfully use the three Rinnegan ninjutsu. This was different from when he was on Titan Star, where he had to rely on the power of the Gem of Reality to cast it. After all, the Rinnegan he had at that time was just a fake Rinnegan made by the Gem of Reality. After lying on the sofa with his eyes closed for more than 10 minutes, he slowly got up and walked to the bathroom. Opening the seventh gate of wonder made him sweat a lot. Although the sweat evaporated as soon as it came out, turning into blue steam, he still couldn't stand the feeling of sweating all over his body. More than half an hour later, after taking a comfortable hot bath and changing into clean clothes, he opened the portal and returned to the New York Temple. Strange's vampire experience mission is not over yet, and he also has the idea of finding a few vampires to practice his Rinnegan. What happened to your eyes? When he arrived at the cafeteria in the temple, Strange, who was eating a burger, looked up at him and asked in confusion. Nothing much, just a change of image. Rog's left eye is now a 3-tomo Sharingan, while his right eye is a Rinnegan. His blood-red left eye and light purple right eye gave off an asymmetrical sense of beauty. Kuroto didn't explain the Rinnegan to Strange. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and sat opposite Strange. After taking a sip of the black coffee, he continued, "If I'm not mistaken, the vampires outside are now looking for information about you. So, do you plan to continue looking for low-level vampires to train your combat skills? Or do you plan to challenge a higher level of difficulty?" The two of them had killed a total of 13 vampires last night. Although there were no witnesses at the scene of the battle, with the vampires' abilities, they should be able to quickly determine that it was them who had done it. Perhaps the information about the two of them had already been placed on the table of the vampire prince in New York City while they were chatting. "I'm fine with anything. It's up to you." Strange swallowed the hamburger in his mouth and said casually, "Then challenge a higher level of difficulty. There's no need to waste too much time on those low-level vampires. You can deal with the vampires below the count level. I'll deal with the ones above the count level." Before Kane appeared, a vampire count was basically the strongest vampire in a city. Even if the vampires in an international metropolis like New York were stronger, they would at most have the strength of a marquis. But it was different now. After Kane appeared, the strength of the vampires had increased significantly. If there were no surprises, the strongest vampire in New York should be a duke. No problem. Strange didn't have any objections to Rog's arrangement. Last night, he had already fought with a vampire with the strength of a viscount. Although he didn't win, he had no problem protecting himself. If you have time today, learn a few more spells. If you only know 5 spells, you can only bully vampires below the count level. The future Doctor Strange was proficient in various schools of magic, and could be considered one of the top existences in the field of magic. But the current Strange was still very far away from that realm. It was only at this time that Rog, a part-time mage, could act as Strange's magic teacher. Okay. Strange ate the last bit of hamburger in his hand, and answered silently. After communicating with Strange about tonight's plan, Rog went to the study in the temple and continued to browse through the magic books in the temple. Knowledge is power. This sentence was not only true in the field of science, but also in the field of magic. Time flew by. After treating the guardian king of the temple, who didn't have good economic conditions, to a luxurious lunch and dinner, Rog left the temple with Strange and began the second day of hunting. Shinra Tensei. Rog raised his right hand and sent the vampire count who tried to pounce on him flying. Just when the vampire count realized the huge difference in strength between him and Rog, and tried to cast magic to escape, Rog raised his right hand again, and aimed his palm at him. 10,000 celestial beacon. Magic undulations emerged from the vampire count's body, and he flew uncontrollably toward Rog. Who is this guy? This unlucky vampire count didn't recognize Rog. The reason was simple. Rog deliberately cast a transformation spell to change his appearance, so that these guys wouldn't frantically run away when they saw him. After using the tyrannical gravitational force of 10,000 celestial beacon to pull the vampire count in front of him, hellfire from the depths of hell appeared on Rog's right hand. The moment his right hand wrapped in hellfire grabbed the vampire count. This vampire count, who had a certain reputation among the vampires, let out a miserable scream. This ear-piercing scream only lasted for a short 1 or 2 seconds before abruptly stopping. The vampire count, whose neck had been grabbed by Logue, quickly turned into a cloud of scattered ashes under the scorching hellfire. A vampire count was nothing more than this. After shaking his right hand that wasn't stained with any ash, Logue turned to look in Strange's direction. Compared to last night, Strange had improved significantly today. With the help of the hovering cloak, he faced off against 5 vampire viscounts alone. Moreover, he fought back and forth without yielding an inch. Chapter 6:14. Last night, he could only fight 1 against 3, but today he could fight 1 against 5. Strange's progress was not small. Of course, this was also related to the fact that he had learned a few new spells today. Because of the time constraints, Strange did not learn too complicated and advanced magic. Instead, he learned a few Zero Circle and First Circle spells that could be mastered by practicing casually. For example, magic tricks, blind, mage's hand, and so on. Although these spells were not advanced, if used well, they could still have an effect on the battle. After taking care of the vampire Earl who was in charge of leading the team, Rog sat casually on the wall beside the street, watching Strange's battle. It had to be said that Strange's performance tonight was very good, and it could be said that he had been reborn, as expected of the successor appointed by the Ancient One. With this adaptability and comprehension ability, even if he did not study magic and change to science, he could still become a representative of a certain field. Although Logue didn't intervene in Strange's battle, the scene of him casually killing the vampire count left a severe psychological shadow in the hearts of the vampires present. Especially the last scream of the vampire Earl. It made the vampires' hair stand on end, and they unconsciously swallowed their saliva. They did not come to look for Rog tonight. The reason why they met was purely because the place where they appeared was too close to the New York sanctum. Before they left the sanctum, Rog sensed their existence. After discovering that there was an Earl among them, he decisively brought Strange over. It would be a waste not to eat the appetizer that was delivered to his door. Moreover, the strength of these vampires was just right for Strange, who had already experienced a battle. Under Rog's observation, Strange was getting more and more used to the fight. Magic missiles, paralysis, mage's hand, and other spells were thrown out one after another, as if they did not cost magic power. For some reason, after seeing Strange's fighting style that already had some prototype of a magic cannon, he could not help but think of Loki, who was far away in Asgard. Speaking of which, he had not seen Loki for a long time. He did not know if the god of trickery, who had regained his freedom, had been doing well recently. Since he thought of Loki, he naturally thought of Thor and Hela. After thinking for a few seconds, he made a decision. Once Strange's mission was over, he would make a trip to Asgard and Warnerheim. The fruit of the tree of God will ripen in 3 months, and he has already opened one of his Rinnegan. Therefore, in the next 3 months, he didn't have anything particularly urgent to deal with. In that case, let's go to Asgard and Warnerheim, and bring Hinata along for a pleasant 2-person trip. Strange would never have thought that while he was fighting these vampires to the death, Logue was actually thinking about traveling to another planet. As time passed, Strange's cooperation with the hovering cloak became increasingly tacit. After casting a combination of teleportation gate, light of mana, blind and magic missiles, Strange got rid of 3 vampires in one go and grasped the hope of victory in his hands. The Count who led the team died, and 3 of his companions also died. Although the remaining 2 vampires tried their best to escape from the mirror dimension, their lives still ended in the mirror dimension that was parallel to the real world. When Strange called back the hovering cloak and adjusted his heartbeat by taking a deep breath, Rog, who was sitting on the wall, suddenly said, "Although your magic power level is very good, you should try to save some magic power in the future. You won't like the feeling of kidney failure when your magic power is exhausted." Overall, Strange's performance in this battle was not bad. The only problem is that he wasted a lot of unnecessary magic power. Spell battery is indeed a tactic that requires continuous high-frequency casting of spells, but this doesn't mean that one doesn't need to consider the consumption of magic power when using this tactic. There is no need to throw 5 spells at an enemy that can be killed with 3 spells. In terms of choosing spells, you can do a little better, and the timing of the release can be a little better. After giving some combat advice to Strange, Rog took the lead to cast the teleportation gate, and left the mirror dimension, and began to choose the second batch of targets for tonight for Strange. There is no shortage of vampires in New York now. If Strange is interested, Rog can even fill his 24 hours a day. But in this way, it is not to train his junior, but to push him to his death. When it was 5 o'clock in the morning, Rog and Strange, who had been busy outside all night, returned to the New York sanctum. Unlike last night, Strange returned to the sanctum lying down this time. He did not die nor was he injured. The reason why he returned to the New York sanctum lying on the hovering cloak was purely because he exhausted all his magic power, and experienced the feeling of kidney failure that Rog mentioned before. More than 50 vampires had died in their hands that night. Among them, 14 were counts and above, and there were even 2 Blood Clan marquises. Of course, these counts and marquises were all killed by Rog, and Strange dealt with vampires below the count rank. After sending Strange, who couldn't even stand up, back to the sanctum, Rog informed the king and then left the sanctum alone. He was going to see an old friend in the vampire clan. After casting the teleportation gate magic to Liberty Island where the Statue of Liberty was located, Rog saw Grand Duke William standing on the Torch of Liberty. "You're here." When Rog cast the teleportation spell and arrived on the torch, Grand Duke William, who was dressed like a British aristocrat, said without looking back, "Didn't you ask me to come over? Why, are you starting to feel heartache for the death of your people?" Rog ignored Grand Duke William, who was standing and looking at the city. He sat down directly on the torch, and looked at the calm sea shrouded in the night. "Why did you attack them?" "We didn't attack Konoha, and we even took the initiative to avoid the areas where Konoha's various branches are located." Grand Duke William turned his head and glanced at Rog, then said without any emotion, "My junior needs some experience recently, and it just so happens that you guys are the most active during this time, so I came to find you guys." After speaking, Rog took out the black business card engraved with a communication magic array from his pocket, and threw it to Grand Duke William. Chapter 6:15. This black business card was specially handed to him by Grand Duke William. It was also a testimony of their little friendship. However, at this time, it was time for their unreliable friendship to come to an end. Ever since Cain returned to the real world, the ambition of the blood breeds to rise again was well known. If not for this, the blood breeds, who had always abided by the precepts of seclusion, would not have openly gone against the Restoration Alliance and the authorities. Although Rog did not know what Cain was thinking for the time being, judging from the current situation, the chances of them becoming enemies were greater than becoming friends. Moreover, he clearly remembered that in his collection of the 13 holy artifacts of the blood breeds, there was still a corpse hand made by Cain's left hand missing. "Are you planning to become enemies with us?" Grand Duke William did not look back. He accurately stretched out his right hand, and caught the business card that was flying at high speed with 2 fingers as he asked in a calm tone, Not completely. The Earth is very big. It's not a big deal to have one more blood breeds. However, you should know that I have some interest in collecting. Among the 13 holy artifacts of the blood breeds, I only got 12. In the past, Grand Duke William was not his opponent. After his strength increased, he would not be his opponent either. If it were not for the fact that he had already satisfied the experience of using the Rinnegan on those blood breeds marquises and counts, Rog would not mind letting Grand Duke William experience the power of the Rinnegan. You, as a superior of the blood breeds, second only to Cain, Grand Duke William knew very well what the corpse hand was about. Although Rog did not say it explicitly, he had already heard the provocation in Rog's words. That's right, it was a provocation. And it was not a provocation to him alone, but a provocation to the entire blood breeds. I'm in a good mood tonight, so I won't attack you. After you go back, tell Cain that I want to see him. The time and place are up to him, but it's best not to delay too long. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that something unpleasant won't happen. After saying that, Rog ignored Grand Duke William's reaction and opened the portal to return to the New York Sacred Palace. He then walked into the portal. After Rog and the teleportation gate disappeared completely, Grand Duke William's countenance turned extremely grim. He exerted force with his fingers that were clamping onto the black name card, breaking the black name card that was as sturdy as steel. An invisible sea breeze blew past, and Grand Duke William, who was wearing a black classical suit, turned into a group of bats and flew out in all directions, disappearing from the torch. Strange's training wasn't over yet. While protecting Strange's life, Rog decided to find some fun for himself. Otherwise, life would be too dull and boring. Furthermore, he was a little interested in the legendary blood tribe ancestor, Cain. This was the first vampire in history, a guy who had single-handedly created a dark race. It would be weird if he wasn't curious about such a legendary creature. The night passed uneventfully. When dawn appeared on the horizon once again, a brownish-yellow letter with a wax seal floated down from the entrance of the New York Sacred Palace. The moment this letter with a classical European style floated down from the air, Rog, who was lying on the sofa in the Sacred Palace study, opened his eyes. Magical fluctuation. Although the magical fluctuation at the entrance of the Sacred Palace was very weak, it didn't escape Rog's perception and woke him up from his sleep. The moment this brownish-yellow letter was about to touch the ground, a small portal with a diameter of more than 20 centimeters appeared on the ground below the letter. This letter passed through the portal on the ground and appeared in front of Rog, who casually held it in his hand. What era is it now? Still using the method of sending letters? After cursing in his heart, Rog opened the letter and quickly browsed through it. Just as he had guessed, the person who sent the letter was none other than Grand Duke William. The contents of the letter could be described in one sentence. The blood tribe ancestor, Cain, had agreed to his request for a meeting. The meeting time was tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the location was Liberty Island where the Statue of Liberty was located. After reading the letter, Rog summoned the hellfire and burned the envelope and the letter into nothingness, leaving not even a trace of ash. At noon, in the dining hall of the Sacred Palace. I have something to deal with tonight. I will let my avatar follow you. You can go out with my avatar to perform the mission. Rog tasted the Mexican food recommended by the king, and said to Strange sitting opposite him, "Avatar? What are you going to do?" Strange raised his head and glanced at Logue as he asked doubtfully, "You don't have to worry about this. Anyway, with my avatar you don't need to worry about safety." In the field of magic, physical avatar is an extremely advanced magic, and the learning difficulty and casting conditions are extremely harsh. But in the field of ninjutsu, this is something that most chunin can do. Although Strange knows that Rog is a ninja, he has never seen Rog use shadow clone jutsu and wood avatar, so he couldn't react for a while. Got it. Obviously, Roger didn't want to tell him what he was going to do tonight, and Strange naturally didn't want to ask any further. Since Rog said that there is no need to worry about safety with his avatar, then he will definitely not encounter a life-threatening emergency. On this point, Strange still trusts Rog. After all, Rog is not only his senior brother, but also Konoha's fourth Hokage. Night once again enveloped New York City, which was known as safe and sound. Strange left the New York sanctum with Logswood clone to continue his actual combat training and vampire hunting plan. When the needle of the huge grandfather clock in the study pointed to 1 o'clock in the morning, Rog put down the magic book in his hand and stretched his stiff neck. Then he put on the hanging ring and created a portal that directly reached Free Island. Although he was going to see the legendary vampire ancestor Kane, he didn't prepare for any battle in advance. He was relaxed as if he was going to see an old friend that he hadn't seen for many years. Although he hasn't fought with Kane, he has seen the battle scenes that spread when Kane fought with the Avatar. Just looking at the strength that Kane showed at that time, Rog didn't think that Kane would have the strength to threaten his life. When he passed through the portal and arrived at the square in front of the Statue of Liberty, he saw the familiar Grand Duke William and Kane, the ancestor of the blood breeds. Chapter 616. Just by looking at his appearance, Grand Duke William, who was dressed in a classic black suit, held an exquisite cane, and had meticulously combed hair, looked more like the legendary blood-kindred ancestor than Kane. Compared to Grand Duke William, whose image and temperament were perfect, Kane's appearance was much more casual. He was wearing a pair of black pants and a white shirt with only the bottom few buttons buttoned. He had a head of casual black hair and a dark red windbreaker. "You are Rog." While Rog was sizing up Kane, Kane was also sizing him up with a sleepy look and asked in a casual manner, "There shouldn't be anyone else who would come at this time other than me. Or have you sucked too much dirty blood and your brain is muddled?" Even though he was facing the so-called ancestor of the vampires, Rog was still as indifferent as ever. When he stepped out of the portal, he used Chakra's sensing ability to sense Kane. His life energy and blood power were both astonishing, far surpassing that of ordinary vampires like Grand Duke William. Apart from that, Rog also sensed an ancient aura that could not be hidden from him, as well as a faint holy aura. It was normal for Kane to have an ancient aura. After all, he was an old monster who had lived for who knew how many years. It was not particularly strange for him to have such an ancient aura. The strange thing was that there was an extremely weak holy aura on him that had not been completely removed. Rog was not unfamiliar with this holy aura. He had sensed the same holy aura on the fragment of Dr. Doom's true cross, as well as in the gate of heaven that he and Doom had jointly summoned. But the problem was that this holy aura that originated from heaven should not appear on a dark race like Kane. Rog had always been skeptical about the claim that Kane was a descendant of Adam and Eve. Or rather, he did not believe in the so-called God-created humans at all. He was more willing to believe in the legend of Nuwa-created humans than the legend of God-created humans. In his opinion, Kane should be a lucky person who had somehow obtained extraordinary powers in ancient times. However, he was different from other extraordinaires. The supernatural power in his invisibility had changed his life form and continued this special life form. Or rather, infected others, thus leading to the birth of the dark race known as the vampires. However, no matter how Kane was born, the holy aura should not have appeared on his body. The holy aura that originated from heaven was completely incompatible with the power of blood, the source of the Blood Clan's power. If the holy aura on Kane's body was left behind by a holy attack, then with Kane's strength, it would not be difficult to get rid of the holy aura. If he couldn't get rid of the divine aura, he wouldn't be standing here right now. There was no such thing as internal injuries in the battle between divine power and the power of darkness. There were only two outcomes for dark creatures that were attacked by divine power: life or death. The presence of holy aura in the bodies of dark creatures for a short period of time could be because they had just suffered a holy attack and had yet to fully recover. But the current Kane didn't look like he had just suffered a holy attack. If Rog didn't guess wrong, the holy aura on Kane's body had been on him for a long time, and it even showed signs of merging with his own aura. As expected of the fourth Hokage, who once forced the Blood Clan to hand over the 12 sacred artifacts. "You are the first person who dares to speak in such a tone in front of me." After speaking, Kane's shoulders shook slightly, and the dark red coat on his body turned into pure blood power and disappeared. Energy materialization. Not just the coat, but all the clothes on Kane's body were products of blood power materialization. In this regard, he was very similar to the goddess of death, Hela, as they both liked to use energy to make their own clothes. Good energy control and use. Looking at the dark red coat that disappeared on Kane's body, Rog silently praised. Are you sure I'm the first? If I remember correctly, my teacher should have met you before. Others may not know, but Rog learned from Ancient One that they had met once. As the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One would not have any prejudice against Kane, a dark creature born on Earth. But this doesn't mean that he will have any good feelings for the Blood Clan. Before Kane has the crazy idea of destroying the world, Ancient One may not do anything to him, but don't expect Ancient One to have any good temper with him. Rog still knows his magic teacher well. You really are a guy that people don't like. Kane didn't continue to dwell on this topic and directly asked Rog's purpose. Tell me, what are you looking for me for? Actually, it's not a big deal, I just want your left hand. You just mentioned the 12 sacred artifacts. I have some obsessive-compulsive disorder. If I don't collect all 13 sacred artifacts, I will feel a little uncomfortable. The purpose of meeting Kane was not just to satisfy his own curiosity. More importantly, he wanted to cut off Kane's left hand to make his collection of the 13 sacred artifacts of the Blood Clan worthy of its name. You want my left hand? Okay, I'll give it to you now. As soon as his voice fell, Kane's right hand grabbed his left wrist. Then his right hand suddenly exerted force and violently tore off his left hand. Don't you want my left hand? I'll give it to you now. With that, Kane threw his left hand, which was still dripping with blood, to Rog at will, as if it was not his own left hand, but an insignificant piece of garbage. Shinra Tensei. The moment Kane threw his left hand, Rog directly launched Shinra Tensei and bounced Kane's left hand flying towards him. Under the terrifying repulsive force of Shinra Tensei, Kane's left hand flew back like a cannonball and hit the base of the Statue of Liberty. Boom. The moment Kane's left hand touched the base, a terrifying explosion like that of an intercontinental missile rang out, blasting a huge crack in the base of the Statue of Liberty. The shock wave generated by the explosion swept past Kane, Rog, and the others like a hurricane, rustling their clothes. You already have strength that far surpasses ordinary people, so there's no need to play these little tricks. It will only lower your status as the ancestor of the Blood Clan. Kane seemed to be very amiable as he handed his left hand to Rog, but in reality, the left hand he threw out was just a fake materialized by the power of blood. Whether it was the left hand or the dripping blood, it was just a product of the materialized power of blood. Chapter 617. On the surface, Kane pulled off his left hand and threw it to Rog. But in fact, Kane threw a blood bomb disguised as his left hand to him. Rog noticed this for the first time, so he used Shinra Tensei to bounce the left hand back. You are more vigilant than I thought. However, this is far from enough. As soon as his voice fell, Kane's figure disappeared from Rog's sight and appeared in front of him in a flash. Almost at the moment when the figure reappeared, Kane's right hand grabbed Rog's neck like a sharp blade. Bang! Kane's right hand grabbed Rog's neck and broke his neck as easily as breaking a branch. However, the death scene that Kane imagined did not happen. Rog turned into a cloud of smoke and dissipated in front of him. Is that so? You're even more reckless than I thought. Kane's speed is indeed not slow, far beyond the limit that can be captured by the human eye. But it's a pity that he is now facing Roger, who has Sharingan and Rinnegan. After Kane appeared in front of him like teleportation, Rog first used Sharingan to cast a genjutsu that only had a misleading effect on Kane. Then, under Kane's eyes, he replaced himself with a shadow clone, making Kane mistakenly think that the attack was him himself. The moment the shadow clone turned into smoke with a bang, Kane realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late. In the blind spot behind him, Rog rushed out of his shadow like a ghost, and his right hand wrapped in blue lightning pierced through Kane's body like a sharp blade. Right on Raikiri. Unlike Chidori, Raikiri does not need to rely on long-distance attacks to improve physical damage and power. There is no need to sprint, it explodes in place in a very short distance, with both chakra damage and physical damage. Compared with Chidori, Raikiri is more suitable for close assassination. Raikiri, which has the advantage of instant burst within a short distance, is also one level higher than Chidori in learning, reaching the level of S-class ninjutsu. However, for Rog, who can be regarded as a ninjutsu professor, there is no difference between A-class and S-class. He can smoothly master and skillfully perform them. Well done. After I broke free from the seal, you were the fastest person to hurt me among all the enemies I fought. Looking at the palm that had pierced through his chest and was still entwined with light blue lightning, Cain spoke slowly with a tone of admiration, as if the person whose chest was pierced through was not him. You are more talkative than I thought. Although Rog had penetrated Cain's body with Raikiri, he did not feel like he had seriously injured Cain. If he could injure the Blood Patriarch so easily, then Cain would be a disgrace. If you weren't a student of Ancient One, I wouldn't mind giving you the embrace and making you a great vampire second only to me. But unfortunately you won't have this chance. After saying that, Cain's body began to become illusory, turning into black bats that flew around. Bat Incarnation, one of the signature spells of the Blood Patriarch. Rog has seen other Blood Patriarchs use this spell before, but compared with Cain, when other Blood Patriarchs use this spell, they will more or less have some time before the skill is activated. Even Grand Duke William can't completely avoid this. But Cain is completely different. Even if he is in front of himself and his right hand is in his body, Rog didn't notice anything strange before the spell took effect. As expected of the Blood Patriarch, just as these black bats fluttered their wings and flew around, Rog raised his left hand and chanted in his heart, 10,000 Mammoth Heaven. A powerful gravitational force suddenly emerged with his left hand as the center. Like a black hole that swallowed the planet, it forcibly pulled back the scattered bats. Even Cain can't get out of his control so easily. Before going to Liberty Island with Grand Duke William, Cain heard that Rog has mastered a move that can control gravity, but he didn't expect the gravitational force of the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull to be so strong. In less than a second, the scattered black bats were all pulled over by the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull to form a black ball of bats in front of Rog's left hand. Although Rog can't find Cain's real body in this group of bats in a short time, as long as he can attract all the black bats, even if he can't distinguish where Cain's real body is, it won't affect his next attack. After using the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull to stop Cain from leaving, he didn't hesitate to summon Hellfire, which has the effect of restraining dark creatures, and let the Hellfire, which has the effect of burning away all the filth in the world, wrap around the bat ball formed by the black bats. From using the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull to summoning Hellfire to burn the black bats, everything happened in a flash. Grand Duke William, who was a distance away, didn't even have time to intervene in the battle before the bat ball in front of Rog turned into a blazing orange fireball. Just as the Hellfire was burning these black bats, Rog suddenly had a premonition of danger. Not good. Just as the premonition of danger appeared in his mind, he decisively stopped using the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull and used the lightning body blink. A silver-white lightning flashed, and Rog's figure instantly disappeared on the spot, retreating tens of meters away. Before the lightning from using the lightning body blink dissipated, a terrifying explosion boomed. A flesh bomb. Although his movements were restricted by the 10,000 Mammoth Heavens pull, and he was being burned by Hellfire, Cain still didn't have the intention of giving up without putting up a fight. No matter what, he was the ancestor of the blood breeds and the world's most powerful vampire. Instead of letting Hellfire burn his bat incarnation to ashes, he might as well use these bat clones as a bargaining chip to escape. Thus he used dark magic, which would destroy his own body as the price. In terms of the difficulty of learning, the flesh bomb wasn't considered an especially profound magic. But as a dark magic that required the sacrifice of one's own body, the flesh bomb had a very typical characteristic. That was, the stronger the body used as a bomb, the greater the power of the explosion. Other than Cain himself, no one knew exactly how strong his body was. The only thing that could be confirmed was that the strength of his body definitely surpassed that of any blood breeds. Boom. A terrifying explosion that was like a small nuclear bomb boomed, leaving behind a huge crater with a diameter of tens of meters on the small Liberty Island. The shockwave from the explosion was like a hurricane that struck every corner of Liberty Island, uprooting all the trees on the island, and causing the damaged Statue of Liberty to shake violently. Chapter 6:18. The Statue of Liberty won't collapse, will it? In the face of the explosive impact of the flesh bomb, the first thought that came to Rog's mind was not how powerful the flesh bomb was, but whether the Statue of Liberty would collapse. He had seen a lot of explosions that were stronger than the flesh bomb, so the flesh bomb that Cain used at this time did not surprise him too much. In other words, if Cain, the ancestor of the vampires, did not have this ability, he would be surprised. In terms of strength, Cain had also reached the level of a heavenly father. However, compared with Thanos, who was a top-level existence among the heavenly fathers, Cain still had a big gap. After using the chakra coat to resist the shock wave of the explosion, Rog turned his attention back to Cain, who was in the center of the explosion crater. Compared to before, Cain's posture at this time looked a lot more decadent, and his hair, which was already messy, now looked like he had not washed it for a week. In addition to the change in his image, Cain's aura had also changed a lot. Now, Cain was unreservedly releasing the powerful aura of the ancestor of the vampires, and a fog-like dark red energy emerged from his body. This dark red fog was none other than the power of blood, the source of power of the vampires. Compared with other vampires, the power of blood in Cain's body was so rich that it was close to the point of substance, and it had even reached the point where it could affect the real world. With Cain's strength, it was not difficult to completely control the power of blood in his body, so that the power of blood did not show any abnormalities. However, he did not do so at this time. Instead, he showed his power of blood in a provocative way. Cain was serious. After successively withstanding the attacks of Reiki, 10,000 mammoth summoning, and hellfire, Cain put away all the contempt in his heart, and put Rog on the same level as himself. When Rog looked at Cain, who had become serious, Cain did not hesitate and raised his hand to launch a few instant magic attacks. Fireballs, lightning, wind blades. In the blink of an eye, these fireballs, lightning, and wind blades came around Rog and completely enveloped him. Shinra Tensei. Although the magic that Cain was casting at this time was not considered advanced magic, Rog still did not intend to use his body to resist these attacks. The incoming fireballs and wind blades were forcefully deflected. The lightning that fell from the sky also changed its trajectory under the effect of Shinra Tensei, landing on the ground more than 10 meters away from him. Lightning Chakra Mode. After using Shinra Tensei to deflect Cain's attack, Rog controlled the chakra in his body and entered the right unchakra mode. He turned the chakra coat that was wrapped around his body into a right unarmor that was surrounded by thunder and lightning that could completely activate his body. The next second, he turned into a bolt of blue lightning and charged straight at Cain. Cain was indeed very strong, but it was not to the point where he needed to go all out as soon as he appeared. In the early stages of the battle, he did not mind having a hand-to-hand fight with Cain. He wanted to see if Cain's blood body was stronger, or if his immortal body was stronger. Looking at Rog, who was charging straight at him, Cain immediately understood what he was planning to do. Then, a few more instantaneous spells were cast. Thunderfall, Earth Spear, Bloodblade, and other spells appeared one after another. Although Cain's spellcasting speed was fast, Rog in the right unchakra mode was even faster. These spells could not keep up with his speed at all, and missed one by one. In the blink of an eye, Rog was in front of Cain. Body arts, monstrous strength. With Rog's current physical fitness, a casual punch from him would have an effect that was not weaker than monstrous strength. But this did not affect his intention to continue increasing his strength. No one would complain about having too much strength, especially in a hand-to-hand fight. When Rog used a speed that was comparable to the lightning body blink to close the distance between himself and Cain, Cain was forced to engage in a hand-to-hand fight with him. Boom! Rog's right fist hit Cain's chest that had been completely restored. The collision between the fist and the chest burst out with a low roar like a war drum. Despite Cain's appearance of excessive drinking in women, his physical strength was far beyond that of ordinary creatures. Although his physical strength could not be compared with the abnormal Thanos, he was not weaker than the Hulk Abomination and the other tank-type units, and was even stronger. Since you want to fight, then I'll fight with you. After resisting Rog's monstrous strength punch with his chest, a perverted smile appeared on Cain's face, and his right claw, which was sharper than a sharp blade, directly grabbed Rog. Soft Fist Technique, 8 trigrams 64 palms. After blocking Kane's fierce claw with his left hand, Rog, without opening the Byakugan, displayed the soft fist that could cause serious damage to the enemy's meridians and internal organs. Except for the abnormal Thanos, Rog had not found a second person who could completely ignore the effect of the soft fist. Although Kane's physical strength was not bad, it did not look like it could ignore the power of the soft fist. When Rog's hands appeared with the soft fist chakra, Kane realized that something was wrong. However, at this time, it was too late for him to carry out any defense or evasion. Although the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams was a little more complicated than ordinary physical techniques, it took more time. But as long as the first few palms could be successfully hit, the enemy would have a hard hit effect like in the game, and the next dozens of palms would get a short uninterrupted time to perform. Of course, this so-called hard hit effect would not be too long, usually only 1 or 2 seconds. Therefore, if he wanted to complete the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams in a short time, the speed of his palms must not be too slow. Among all his combat attributes, Rog was most satisfied with his speed attribute. Whether it was movement speed or attack speed, it had always been the focus of his training. 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms. Taking advantage of the time when Kane could not resist and could not move, Rog used his hand speed far beyond that of ordinary people to finish the first 32 palms, and hit the soft fist chakra into Kane's body. Although he did not use the Byakugan to specifically observe the flow of the blood power in Kane's body, Rog was not worried about the final effect of the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams. Although the blood breed and human beings were two different races, the body structure of the blood breed was very similar to that of human beings. This also meant that the internal organs of the blood breed and human beings were similar in terms of the position and movement principle. Although the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams had the effect of sealing the target's energy flow, what Rog wanted at this time was not to seal the flow of Kane's blood power, but to cause internal damage to Kane's body. 64 palms. After finishing all 64 palms, Rog did not stop there, but used a move that once left a deep impression on Grand Duke William. 8 trigrams Mountain Break. Chapter 619. Rog pressed his right palm on Kane's chest, and the terrifying chakra in his body surged wildly along the meridians of his right hand. The light blue chakra completely enveloped Kane like a laser beam. Boom. Kane, who had just endured the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams, did not have the chance to resist before he was sent flying. After using the Bagua Mountain Breaker to send Kane flying, Rog did not continue to pursue him. Instead, he stood where he was and waited for Kane. Although the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams and the Bagua Mountain Breaker were not weak, it was still a little too whimsical to think that he could defeat Kane. In fact, Rog had never expected to defeat Kane so easily. No matter what, Kane was the ancestor of the Blood Kindred, and the most powerful vampire in the world. If he had been defeated so easily, the Blood Kindred would not have appeared in front of the world so arrogantly after his return. Seeing Rog use the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams to restrict Kane's movements, and then use the Bagua Mountain Breaker to send Kane flying, Grand Duke William could not help but frown. The tactics that Rog had used just now were exactly the same as the tactics that had defeated him before. They both started with the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams and ended with the Bagua Mountain Breaker as the ultimate skill. Although Rog did not use the Thunder Evasion Chakra mode when he fought with him back then. However, there was no difference in the way that he thought about the two battles. Until now, Grand Duke William still clearly remembered the pain that he had felt after being sent flying by the Bagua Mountain Breaker. That was the most profound and painful lesson in his life. It was also because of that defeat that he represented the Blood Kindred and offered the 12 sacred weapons, making the sacred weapons that the Blood Kindred were so proud of become Rog's personal collection. While Grand Duke William was recalling that battle, Kane, who had been sent flying by the Bagua Mountain Breaker, stood up again and moved his limbs as if he was stretching and relaxing after a workout. Neither the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams nor the Bagua Mountain Breaker caused fatal damage to him, but the chakra that had entered his body caused him a lot of trouble. These chakra cells were like cancer cells, stubbornly residing in his body, corroding his internal organs and hindering his body's movements. What was even more troublesome was that these chakra were extremely resistant to the power of blood, making it impossible for him to use the power of blood to quickly disperse these chakra. After dispersing the chakra in his body so that it would not affect his normal activities, Cain ignored the remaining chakra and allowed it to stay in his body. With his body's regenerative ability, the remaining chakra would be cleared out sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. After confirming that the remaining chakra in his body would not affect the upcoming battle, Cain tore off his white shirt that had obvious holes and blood on it, and walked towards Rog bare-chested. He couldn't remember the last time he was sent flying. The only thing he was sure of was that he didn't like this feeling. When he was only about 20 meters away from Rog, he stopped, raised his right hand and hooked his finger at Rog. Obviously, he intended to continue the hand-to-hand combat with Rog. Looking at Cain's sharp eyes, Rog showed a satisfied smile. The reason why he didn't continue to pursue Cain was that he didn't want to end the hand-to-hand combat so soon. Otherwise, he could have launched a second wave of attacks before Cain got up. Instead of allowing Cain to disperse the chakra in his body, there was no need for communication. Cain and Rog burst out at a speed that was beyond the limit of what the naked eye could see and rushed towards each other. Bang 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 bang. In just a moment, the two of them were in front of each other and attacked each other. Whether it was Rog or Cain, they did not use any fancy moves at this time. They were like two primitive beasts engaging in the simplest and most brutal hand-to-hand combat. Punches, blocks, whipping kicks, elbows. At this time, rather than saying that Rog and Cain were fighting with skills and experience, it was better to say that they were displaying their terrifying physical qualities that were far beyond that of ordinary people. Any punch or kick attack would show an extremely terrifying power under their strength and speed. In the collision of their punches and kicks, there were even air shock waves that were like sonic booms, adding a rhythmic background music to their battle. Bang bang bang. Grand Duke William, who came with Cain, completely dismissed the idea of intervening after witnessing the battle between the two of them. The reason was simple. Even as the Grand Duke of the Blood Kindred, he was completely unable to keep up with the rhythm of the battle between Rog and Cain. In Grand Duke William's line of sight, Rog and Cain had both turned into afterimages. Their entire figures, including their punches and kicks, had become illusory. As time passed, the speed and rhythm of their attacks became faster and faster. They even gradually showed the effect of disappearing. Ever since coming to this world, Rog had fought with many powerful enemies. However, until now, Cain was the only enemy who could completely keep up with his attack speed. This was something that even the goddess of death, Hel, had not been able to do. While Hela's swordsmanship could be considered to be superb, in a pure fight like this, Hela was clearly weaker than Cain. The reason for such a gap might have something to do with the fighting style of the Blood Kindred. Among the Blood Kindred that Rog had fought, apart from the so-called Blood Kindred guards, most of them did not like to use weapons. To these Blood Kindred, their claws were the most lethal and most suitable melee weapons for them. In this regard, Cain, as the ancestor of the Blood Kindred, was particularly outstanding. Even if he had entered the Thunder Evasion Chakra mode, and had the powerful recovery of the immortal body, Rog still did not dare to use his body to resist Cain's claws. As time passed slowly, the melee combat between Rog and Cain gradually entered a white-hot state. At this time, neither of them dared to relax in the slightest. In such a high-speed melee attack and defense, even a delay of a few tenths of a second could lead to the final defeat. However, just as they were having the time of their lives, the ravaged Freedom Island welcomed the second batch of visitors. Although the flesh bomb that Cain had used earlier did not injure Rog, it had successfully attracted the attention of the Avengers and the military in New York City. While the two of them were competing in melee combat, the Avengers' Quinjet and the military's armed helicopters arrived above Freedom Island and aimed their weapons at them, as well as Grand Duke William, who had been idle for a long time. Chapter 620. Rog and Cain noticed the arrival of the Avengers' Quinjet and military helicopters when they were still a few kilometers away from Freedom Island. However, the two of them did not take these uninvited guests to heart and continued to fight in close combat. Since they had already fought to this extent, they would not stop here no matter what. Before the outcome was decided, even if the Avengers and the military completely surrounded the place, they would not stop, let alone the Quinjets and military helicopters. Moreover, they were not the only ones on Freedom Island. When the Quinjets and military helicopters aimed their weapons at Rog and Kane, who could barely catch a trace of them, Grand Duke William, who had been watching the battle for a long time, made his move. Although Grand Duke William could not intervene in the battle between Rog and Kane, it was not difficult for him to deal with the Quinjets and military helicopters. The Quinjets and military helicopters hovering above Freedom Island did not even have time to fire before Grand Duke William launched a magic attack first. Grand Duke William casually raised his right hand that was holding his cane, and a dark thundercloud that completely covered Freedom Island quickly appeared in the calm night sky, making the already dim night even darker. When the thundercloud rolled and gathered into a ball, 5 to 6 10-meter-wide tornadoes surged out of the thundercloud, attacking the Quinjets and military helicopters like giant pythons that were hunting for their prey. Although Grand Duke William did not know why Kane insisted on fighting Rog in close combat, he knew very well that if he let others disturb the battle between the two of them, his ancestor would be very unhappy. Once Kane was unhappy, the consequences would be severe. Therefore, even if Kane did not give him any instructions, he did not dare to let the Quinjets and military helicopters fire. The giant tornadoes that descended from the sky forced the Avengers' Quinjets and military helicopters to continuously retreat, driving them out of the area where Freedom Island was located. Before Kane returned to the modern world, Grand Duke William could not cast such high-level magic so casually. However, after Kane broke free from the seal, as long as the conditions for casting magic were not too harsh, he could basically cast it casually. After using the tornado to chase away the Quinjet fighters and military helicopters, Grand Duke William did not stop what he was doing. He continued to mobilize the power of blood in his body. Just using a tornado to chase away the Avengers and the military was far from enough. In order to give Kane an undisturbed combat environment, Grand Duke William cast a barrier spell that he rarely used. Vampire Magic, Blood Cage. A basketball-sized bright red ball of light appeared between Grand Duke William's hands. Then, he pushed the ball of light that was shining with a demonic red light towards the sky. Bang! When the bright red ball of light reached a height of several hundred meters, it shattered with a bang and turned into red light spots that flew in all directions. Within a few seconds, a hemispherical bright red barrier completely enveloped Liberty Island, isolating the Quinjet and the armed helicopters outside. After doing all this, Grand Duke William gradually calmed down the somewhat restless blood power in his body and held the black cane in his hand again. Target confirmed. It's Grand Duke William of the Blood Race. Not long after the bright red barrier was formed, a voice of confirmation sounded from the Quinjet fighter of the Avengers. The person who spoke was none other than Rogers of the American team, who was in the Avengers but was inextricably linked to the military. Why is he here? Didn't the intelligence say that he was in Los Angeles? Natasha and the fighter said with a frown. Who knows? Maybe they're planning something crazy again? Rogers of the American team also showed a puzzled expression. According to the intelligence they received, Grand Duke William was still in Los Angeles a day ago, and had even organized a secret internal meeting of the Blood Race. Have the identities of the other two targets been confirmed? Natasha, who was wearing a tight black combat suit, came to the side of the Quinjet pilot and asked the pilot. We can't confirm it for the time being. The signals of the radar and detector have been interfered with. We can't capture a clear image. The pilot of the fighter answered helplessly. Observing with the naked eye, Natasha and the others could clearly see the light blue light and dark red light that flashed across Liberty Island. But that was all they could see. Neither Rog nor Kane deliberately hid their tracks. The reason for this situation was purely because the two of them were too fast. As for the interference of the airborne radar and detector, it was due to some energy spillover and interference caused by the collision between Chakra and the Blood Force. Informed Tani. Grand Duke William's appearance in New York now is not a good sign. Although she didn't know who the other two targets were, Natasha instinctively felt that the other two were not ordinary people from the fact that Grand Duke William could only stand aside and watch the battle. Moreover, the light blue light that flashed away gave her a sense of déjà vu. Could it be him? Didn't Tani say that he refused to intervene in the affairs of the blood race? A very reliable man appeared in Natasha's mind. Grand Duke William's enchantment, Blood Cage, temporarily isolated the Avengers and the military from interfering, but this was also a temporary measure. Although the defensive power of the Blood Cage was not bad, if the Avengers and the military bombarded it recklessly, the Blood Cage would not last long. In addition, the blood force in Grand Duke William's body could not allow him to maintain the effect of the Blood Cage forever. Just as Grand Duke William began to silently calculate how long he could maintain the Blood Cage, the close combat between Rogue and Kane had also reached a critical moment where the outcome of the battle would be decided. Whether it was Kane's blood body or Rogue's immortal body, it was impossible for them to continuously support their ultra-fast close combat attack and defense. Even if they both had the strength of the Heavenly Father, the consumption of physical strength was a problem they had to face. After blocking Kane's right hand that was trying to grab his heart for the umpteenth time, Rogue took the initiative to retreat a few steps, giving the initiative to attack to Kane. What's this? Kane never thought that Rogue would give up the initiative to attack at this time. Although he did not know what Rogue was planning, he did not intend to give up this opportunity. After this fight, he had thoroughly experienced how difficult it was to deal with Rogue in the field of close combat. Among all the enemies he had fought, Rogue was the only one who made him feel the pressure of death in close combat. This was something that the battle angels of heaven had not been able to do. Chapter 621. Although he was emotional, Kane didn't hesitate in his actions. After fighting for so long, this was the first time he took the initiative in the battle. Although Rogue's deliberate move to give up the initiative made him a little uneasy, he believed that he had enough strength to resolve any crisis. What's more, he has a regenerative ability that is far beyond ordinary people. As long as Rogue can't kill him in one blow, he doesn't need to worry too much about his own safety. Kane didn't let go of this rare opportunity. His fingernails were as sharp as blades as his hands attacked Rogue's throat and heart. Looking at Rogue's increasingly dignified look, a cruel smile appeared on Kane's face. Now he has begun to fantasize about how to ravage the defeated Rogue. Due to the fact that he had the upper hand in the initiative, Roger could not resist Kane's attack like before. He could only retreat continuously. One step back, one step back. Kane, whose combat awareness and skills are top-notch, didn't waste this opportunity. He kept moving forward and forcibly pulled Rogue into his battle rhythm. From the looks of the scene, Rogue has completely fallen into a disadvantage and can only constantly avoid Kane's attacks by retreating. Although there is no way to take down Rogue immediately, Kane isn't worried about this at all. According to the current development of the rhythm, as long as Rogue makes a mistake, he can completely establish the victory and really defeat this annoying ninja. Kane's prediction was not wrong, but he ignored one point, that is, the initiative he now has in the battle is given to him by Rogue. As an experienced ninja, Rogue certainly knows what it means to give up the initiative, but he still did it. The reason is simple, because only by giving the initiative to Kane and tilting the scales of victory to his side, he will ignore his real purpose. As Kane's blade-like claws continued to swipe around him, Rogue's mind remained calm and silently calculated the time. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. In less than 10 seconds, Kane had launched hundreds of attacks, forcing Rogue to retreat dozens of meters. However, all of this was within his calculations. 2 seconds. After dodging Kane's beast-like claws once again, Rogue retreated a few more meters. Kane did not give him a chance to pull away. He immediately pressed forward and continued to maintain an attacking distance of less than a meter. 1 second. After counting down to the last second in his heart, Rogue stopped all his movements, as if he had completely given up on resisting. He stood still and let Kane attack him. Had he completely given up? Kane immediately noticed Rogue's abnormality, but his attack did not hesitate at all. He continued to attack Rogue's vital points. The moment his right hand was about to touch Rogue's chest, Kane's instinctive sense of danger suddenly emerged in his mind. Not good. There was a problem. His physical instincts were frantically reminding him to retreat, but Cain eventually chose to follow his heart and tried to completely defeat Rog. However, just when his right hand was only a few millimeters away from Rog, he instantly disappeared in front of Rog and flashed dozens of meters away. What was going on? At this time, Cain still maintained his attack on Rog's chest, but his face was full of surprise. Judging from the position, he should have chosen to flash back on his own initiative. However, Cain was 100% sure that it was not him who did it. Teleportation? Or space folding? Several thoughts flashed through Cain's mind in an instant, but soon, he realized that things were not as simple as he thought. To be precise, he did not know what had happened at all. He was certain that Rog definitely did not have time to cast magic in the high-speed close-range attack in defense just now. If Rog could cast magic under his nose under such circumstances, then he would be too incompetent. What on earth did you do? Cain stood in place and thought for a few seconds, then asked Rog, who was dozens of meters away, with a face full of vigilance. If you want to know, you have to come over. Rog replied with a smile, then slowly raised his right hand under Cain's gaze and hooked his finger at him. At this time, although Cain had been fully alert, the moment Rog hooked his finger, he once again flashed and disappeared, suddenly appearing in front of Rog. You lost. Looking at Cain, who was only about a meter away from him, Rog said with a casual expression, "What on earth did you do?" Cain frowned, and his tone became cold. However, just as he finished speaking, his whole body disappeared again, and appeared more than 10 meters behind Rog. I already told you you lost. Rog turned to face Cain and said with an extremely certain tone, "Damn it. What the hell is going on?" In the field of magic, Cain was also one of the top existences. The blood breed magic developed according to the characteristics of the power of blood was superb and unique. But at this time, he was completely confused. There were no magical fluctuations, no traces of casting, and even the spatial fluctuations that spatial magic must have. This is not magic. This is definitely not magic. What Rog used at this time was indeed not magic, but ninjutsu. A ninjutsu that he had not given up on practicing since he came to this world. The Flying Thor technique. This was one of the rookie rewards given to him by the system. In the beginning, he could only use the most basic Flying Thor, which was to imprint the Flying Thor technique on a fixed target, and then use the positioning technique to perform spatial movement. After a long time, he became more and more proficient in the Flying Thor, and finally mastered the Flying Thor. Second stage, which could perform spatial movement and attack by locking the movement state of the movement. The Flying Thor slash that he once used on Thanos was actually an attack method of the Flying Thor. Second stage. According to common sense, after mastering the Flying Thor to this level, he could completely put his energy into other ninjutsu. But he did not do so. Instead, he kept thinking about how to continue to improve the Flying Thor. Finally, after spending a lot of brain cells and testing, he developed the third stage of the Flying Thor. Flying Thor, third stage. The reason why Cain had this inexplicable flash was one of the effects of the Flying Thor, third stage. And this was why he was so sure that Cain had lost. Because once the Flying Thor, third stage was successfully used, it could be said to be unbeatable. Chapter 622. In the field of how to quickly approach the enemy, the Flying Thor and Flying Thor 2 Dan have already reached the extreme. If he wants to continue to improve the Flying Thor, then he must not develop it according to the existing ideas. So Rog had a bold idea. Since the road of quickly approaching the enemy is coming to an end, then why not do the opposite and find a way to make the enemy quickly come to his side? In terms of effect, quickly approaching the enemy and the enemy quickly coming to his side are the same thing. As long as he has the initiative, then whether he is close to the enemy or the enemy is close to him, there is no difference. Then the problem is how to quickly make the enemy come to him through the Flying Thor. In theory, it is very simple. He just needs to reverse the operation of the Flying Thor. But it is very simple in theory. It does not mean that it will be easy to operate in reality. As everyone knows, the Flying Thor is a space-time ninjutsu. It is a chakra ninjutsu that needs chakra to activate. In a way, ninjutsu is like advanced mathematics. If you don't know it, you don't know it. There is no such thing as suddenly being enlightened. Therefore, how to make the enemy who doesn't know ninjutsu quickly come to his side through the Flying Thor has become the main technical difficulty of the Flying Thor -3 Dan. After spending who knows how many brain cells and hair, Rog had a whimsical idea. Since the enemy can't fly Thor, then I will take the initiative to Flying Thunder God through the enemy's body. In order to successfully perform the Flying Thor, 3 basic conditions need to be met. The first is chakra. This is the key element of all ninjutsu. The second is the ability to accurately control chakra. This is also one of the basic elements of all ninjutsu. The third is to use the Flying Thor as a spatial anchor. As long as these 3 conditions are met, the Flying Thor can be smoothly performed. Among these 3 conditions, the Flying Thor is undoubtedly the easiest to achieve. However, unlike Flight Thor and Flight Thor 2, Flight Thor 3 required 2 spells. One was a skill that could be used by both the normal Flying Thor and Flying Thor 2nd stage. The other was a Flying Thor technique that was operated in reverse. To be more precise, it was not a reverse operation of the Flying Thor technique, but an activation technique that replaced the Meridian system. This is similar to the ninjutsu scroll that has been prepared in advance. As long as there is chakra input, it can be actively activated and smoothly cast the related ninjutsu. Flying Thor 3 stages was a tactic that had to be imprinted on the target to activate. Rog simply named it the 3 stages tactic. Although the research was a bit difficult, with the help of ninjutsu development master Hinata, he finally completed this step. With the 3-stage tactic to replace the enemy's control of chakra, the only problem left was how to make the target possess chakra. Regarding this point, Rog found inspiration in nuclear radiation. By being in close contact with the enemy for a period of time, his chakra can be used to radiate the enemy like nuclear matter, so that the enemy has a temporary chakra constitution. Of course, this chakra radiation can't exist for a long time, but even if it can only be maintained for a short period of time, it is completely enough. The 3 stages tactic to replace chakra has been created, and the target also has a temporary chakra constitution. So he only needs to use chakra to stimulate the 3 stages tactic on the target to force the enemy to activate the Flying Thor. That's right, after completing such a complicated preparation, he can only force the enemy to activate the normal Flying Thor. Flying Thor, 3 stages. The most important and most crucial point is that this is a space-time type ninjutsu. Helping the enemy satisfies the prerequisite of the Flying Thunder God, but only the first half of the Flying Thor, 3 stages. Just letting the enemy come to him with the Flying Thunder God is not enough to satisfy Rog's ambition. In order to make the Flying Thor 3 stages truly have the power to completely change the outcome of the battle, he made a crazy attempt. Under normal conditions, the Flying Thor is only a very small technique, about a few centimeters in size. But the Flying Thor 3 stages uses a Flying Thor that is much bigger. As for how big it will be, it depends on the actual needs of the battle. For example, the Flying Thor 3 stages that Rog is using now, the Flying Thor used for spatial positioning is bigger than the Freedom Island under his feet. Such a huge Flying Thor, he can't use it in an instant, so he can only take the initiative to give up the initiative of the battle. In this way, he can not only paralyze Kane, but also buy enough time for himself. The countdown just now was the countdown to the deployment of the Flying Thor. As for the 2 tasks of chakra radiation and 3 stages, he quietly completed them when he was fighting with Kane. Although he has some persistence in close combat, he is not so persistent that he has to fight in close combat. To put it simply, his action of wanting to win in close combat with Kane was fake. Everything was fake. Everything was just to complete the preparation work of the Flying Thor 3 stages. Of course, when he was completing these preparations, he also solved the problem of letting Kane have chakra. Strictly speaking, it was not letting Kane have chakra, but just preparing the chakra for him to use the 3 stages. Kane may not have realized until now that the Thunder Release chakra mode that Rog is now activating is overflowing with energy. The overflowing chakra is not the energy that spilled out because of the intense battle, as Kane and Natasha thought, but the chakra that Rog intentionally released into the air. Although this chakra seems to have completely escaped his control, in reality, This chakra is still under his control. Now the entire Freedom Island is filled with chakra that is under his control. And this chakra is the key to activating the 3 stages. By activating the 3 stages on Kane's invisibility, Rog can force him to appear anywhere he wants with the Flying Thunder God. Even if he now holds the Kusanagi sword in front of him, Kane can only obediently bump into it. Although the conditions to use it are a little harsh and complicated, once all the preconditions are met, Kane can only appear wherever he wants. In other words, the current Freedom Island is Rog's territory of the Flying Thor. As long as he wants, no matter how unwilling Kane is, he can only let him change his position. Chapter 623. What on earth have you done? Kane's face was gloomy as he spoke to Rog in a cold tone. Why won't you accept reality? I'll say it for the last time, you've lost. Rog ignored Kane's anger and said with a calm expression on his face, unless Kane could change his body right under his nose, he would not have any hope of winning this battle. Kane wanted to continue speaking, but after thinking about the completely incomprehensible space transfer just now, he finally shut his mouth. Although he did not know what Rog had done, he had to admit that he had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. Alright, we've been fighting for so long, it's time to end it. After saying that, Rog summoned the Kusanagi sword and waved it around. The moment he summoned the Kusanagi sword, Kane was fully alert and even prepared to release magic at any time. But it turned out that regardless of whether he was prepared or not, he could not change his ending. In just a moment, he once again flashed in front of Rog and let his heart collide with the tip of the Kusanagi sword. Uft. The moment his heart was pierced by the Kusanagi sword, Kane uncontrollably spat out a mouthful of blood. This blood, which contained a strong power of blood, splashed in front of Rog, but was blocked by the chakra coat that came with the Raiten chakra mode, and did not stain Rog's body at all. For an ordinary creature, having his heart pierced in an instant was definitely a fatal blow. But to Kane, having his heart pierced through was more of an insult than anything else. With his physique, even if his head was chopped off, it would not be a big deal at all, let alone having his heart pierced. Unless his origin was directly damaged by the divine power, all physical injuries were nothing to him. The injury to his heart was not fatal, but this sword left an extremely deep psychological injury to Kane. After turning from a human into a vampire, this was the first time he had encountered an attack that he could not understand at all and could not block. This kind of psychological blow was even more serious than when he was besieged by heaven. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Kane, the ancestor of the vampires, began to break down. Although Rog did not know what Kane was thinking, he did not care about it and once again launched the Flying Thor third Dan. Kane, who had his heart pierced by the Kusanagi sword, disappeared instantly. In the next second, Kane, who had already broken down, crashed into Grand Duke William like a meteor, and the two rolled more than 10 meters out of control. After sending Grand Duke William flying, Kane did not even have the time to get up before his figure disappeared once again. At the same time, Roger, who was dozens of meters away, raised his right hand and swung his Kusanagi sword. The moment he swung his Kusanagi sword, there was nothing in front of him. The moment the Kusanagi sword fell, Kane appeared in front of it. The sharp Kusanagi sword sliced through Kane's right hand without any hesitation, cutting it off completely. But for Kane, all this was far from over. Before his right hand, which was cut off by the Kusanagi sword, fell to the ground, he flashed to the barrier of the blood cage and used his body to feel the power of the blood cage. He did not try to defend himself when he hit the blood cage. It was as if he was completely desperate and let himself hit the blood cage. He had just tried it, and this passive flash on his body was not just a means of space transfer. At the moment when he was forced to move, the power of blood in his body would be seriously disturbed, cutting off the possibility of him using the power of blood to cast magic. As for using the power of blood to repair his injured body, he did not even think about it. No matter how much he recovered, he would not be able to get rid of this strange flash state. Recovering his body would only make Logue more happy with his attacks. He really lost. Although he did not know how he lost, he could only helplessly accept the reality now. Not long after he hit the blood cage, he flashed again and disappeared. Just like the previous few times, he was forced to flash in front of Rog again. Just as Cain resigned himself to fate and waited for Rog to attack him, Rog abnormally stopped attacking. I think we can talk about the problem of your left hand now. He was definitely going to win, but Rog had no intention of killing Cain. Strictly speaking, there was no unresolvable hatred between him and Cain. Apart from the fact that he led the werewolves to kill some vampires and took away the 12 sacred artifacts of the blood breeds, he and the blood breeds were completely separate. As for the harm that the blood breeds had caused to the American people during this period of time, it had nothing to do with him. I am not an American, and I have no feelings or obligations to this country. More importantly, he was a merciful ninja. Killing was just a means to achieve his goal, and it was not where his pleasure lay. If you want it, just take it. After glancing at Rog, Cain decisively raised his left hand and motioned for Rog to cut it off and take it away. There's no hurry. I want to know. It is said that the sacred artifact, Corpse Hand, hides the secret of the world. I want to know what this secret is. A look of curiosity appeared on Rog's face. After obtaining the 12 sacred artifacts of the blood breeds, he tested the power of these 12 collectibles. All in all, although some of the 12 saint artifacts were exaggerated, most of them were in line with the truth. For example, the sacred artifact, Blood Key, which was said to be able to open the door to hell, could indeed open a dimensional portal to hell. As he did not have a good relationship with the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, he did not really go through the portal. He only sent a shadow clone to take a look. As it turned out, on the other side of the dimensional portal, it was indeed hell that he had been to twice before. As for the sacred artifact, Illusion Mirror, which was said to be able to see the past of the blood owner, and the sacred artifact, Punishment Axe, which could increase the strength of the axe wielder by dozens of times, the effects were seriously exaggerated. Although the introduction of these 12 sacred artifacts was mixed, it still did not stop him from being curious about the sacred artifact, Corpse Hand. Or rather, he was curious about the so-called secret of the world in Corpse Hand. You really want to know? After hearing Rog's question, Cain suddenly revealed a strange smile and said in a terrifying tone, "Of course." Rog gave a definite answer. "Since you want to know, I'll tell you. But if you die because of this secret, I won't be responsible." Chapter 624. I might die after knowing it. After hearing what Cain said, Rog became even more excited. If there is no danger, how can it be worthy of the description of the secret of the world? It's okay, go ahead. Cain didn't expect that after hearing his reminder, Rog became even more excited. In Rog's eyes, he saw a description that he had just learned not long ago. Rog's gossipy soul was ignited. Actually, this is not a particularly secret thing. Your teacher Ancient One also knows about it. Cain said softly when he saw Rog's excited face. Ancient One also knows about it? After hearing Cain's words, the fire of gossip in Rog's heart suddenly dimmed a little. Looking at you, you should have been to other planets. But I don't know if you have found out why only Earth has legends related to heaven and hell. Cain did not directly tell Rog the so-called secret of the world, but asked him back. Isn't this because of different civilizations? Speaking of which, it seems that he really hasn't heard about heaven and hell on other planets and civilizations. No, it's not just a matter of different civilizations. The more important reason is that Earth is a specially selected planet. Cain was silent for a few seconds, and then slowly said, "If the universe we are in is a dimension, then heaven and hell are parallel dimensions to our dimension. Under normal circumstances, if a life of one dimension wants to enter another dimension, it only needs to choose a relatively suitable place to complete the crossing between dimensions. You have the blood key, you should know this." Hearing this, Rog nodded, indicating that he understood. However, heaven and hell did not do this. They would only choose Earth as the entrance to our dimension. The reason why this abnormal situation occurs is because we, or all the creatures on Earth, are just livestock raised in captivity by heaven and hell. They select our souls like goods and use our souls to strengthen their power. Then they used the strength and power to invade Earth. In order to harvest more souls, they left a so-called legend on Earth, making us willingly offer our souls to them. Back then I discovered this point, so I began to build blood race cities, expand the scale of the blood race, and prolong the short and fragile lives of humans. When humans break free from the shackles of life, the number of souls they can harvest will naturally decrease, and Earth will have more power to resist their invasion. Unfortunately, I wasn't strong enough at the time and couldn't resist the attack of heaven. As a result, the first city that I built with my own hands was completely sealed. Human beings have never had true freedom. This planet is a cage that imprisons our bodies and souls. This is the so-called secret of the world that you want to know. Although Cain's tone was very calm, for some reason, Rog could hear the anger and dissatisfaction in his voice. Although the current Cain did not seem to be lying, he did not completely believe Cain's statement. He had never been to heaven, but he was no stranger to hell. Mephisto and the demons in hell did have the habit of using human souls to enhance their own strength, but this behavior, in his opinion, was more like an enhancement of their own strength, not a preparation for invading Earth. Your teacher, Ancient One, is now the main barrier protecting Earth from the invasion of other dimensions. If you want to know if what I said is true, you can ask her and she will tell you the answer. After saying that, Cain used his newly grown right hand to tear off his left hand and handed it to Rog. The blood key can open the door to hell, and my left hand can open the passage to heaven. If you want to go, you can go and take a look yourself. Looking at the left hand that Cain handed over, which was still dripping with blood, Rog hesitated for a moment. Then he summoned a small metal box and asked Cain to put his left hand in it. If there is a chance, I will definitely go to heaven to take a look. After putting the metal box back into the psychic scroll, Rog said to Cain. At this moment, he thought of a very important question. Wait, before you unlocked the seal, you already had a corpse hand sacred artifact. You just said that your left hand can open the passage to heaven. Then what you are giving me now, is it any different from the one you left to your descendants before? Rog didn't want any fake goods in his collection. After hearing this secret, is that all you care about? Cain suddenly felt that he was really out of touch with the times. He couldn't understand Rog's brain circuit at all. It doesn't matter whether heaven and hell want to invade Earth or not. As long as Earth still has Sorcerer Supreme, there is no need to worry too much about this. So is the left hand you just gave me different from the previous sacred artifact corpse hand? Rog has full confidence in Ancient One's strength, so he is not worried about whether Earth will be invaded by other dimensions. And even if Ancient One is gone, there are other hidden big shots on Earth. If hell and heaven really invade Earth, these big shots will naturally come forward to solve it. There is no difference. This is the sacred artifact corpse hand you want. Cain calmed down and said in a suppressed tone. The reason why corpse hand can become a sacred artifact has nothing to do with whether it is my left hand or not. The important thing is that it can open the passage to heaven. Before being sealed, I transferred this ability to my left hand, and gave my left hand to my descendants as a sacred artifact. After coming out, I found the previous left hand and took back the ability sealed on it. So, what I just gave you is the only corpse hand in this world. After receiving Cain's confirmation, Rog nodded with satisfaction. As long as it's not a fake. By the way, I have a small matter that I need your help with. Rog was planning to leave Liberty Island, but just when he was about to open the portal to return to New York Sanctum, he remembered his junior brother. Go ahead, what else is there? My junior brother is in New York for actual combat experience. If you don't mind, I hope you can arrange some targets for him to practice. In addition to these targets for practice, I think other blood breeds can choose to live in another city. Chapter 625. Although Rog had spoken in a euphemistic manner, Cain understood what he meant. Simply put, he hoped that the blood breeds could completely withdraw from New York, but before that, he needed to leave behind some of the weaker blood breeds for his junior brother Strange to practice with. If it were any other time, Cain would not have agreed to Rog's request, let alone get angry on the spot. But it was different now. He no longer had the right to bargain with Rog. No problem. How many people do you want to leave behind for your junior brother to practice with? Kane's tone was very calm, as if he was saying that the moon was beautiful tonight. I don't need a lot, a few hundred will do. All those with the strength of an earl and above will leave. As for an earl, 8 or 10 will do. With Strange's current strength, the Earl of the Blood Breeds was almost his limit. Of course, this was only Rog's speculation based on the number of spells he had mastered so far. As a mage, Strange did not need to train hard to improve his strength like he did. His strength was only related to the number of spells he had mastered. 10 earls, 100 viscounts, 200 barons. After thinking for a second or two, Kane gave Rog an accurate answer. Okay. Although 310 blood breeds was not a lot, it was enough for Strange to complete this practical experience. As for whether he wanted to continue fighting with the blood breeds in the future, that was his own business. Rog would not always stay by his side to protect him. Aren't you going to say hello to the people outside? I remember that you have a good relationship with Fu Lian. Kane suddenly spoke, just as Rog was about to use the portal magic to return to the New York Holy Cathedral. Let me correct you, my relationship with Fu Lian is not very good. But you can spare the life of the woman on the Quinjet. I do have a little friendship with her. Rog used chakra to sense the Quinjet outside Liberty Island, and answered casually. Then, under the watchful eyes of Kane and Grand Duke William, he opened the portal back to the New York sanctum and walked straight in. When Rog's figure completely disappeared, Grand Duke William, who had been watching the battle for a long time, slowly walked up to Kane and said respectfully, "Ancestor, do you need me to warn the people outside?" "No need, we've lost enough blood tonight." Kane looked up at the bright moon and manipulated the power of blood in his body to restore his left hand. After regenerating his left hand, Kane turned into a ball of black blood and disappeared before Grand Duke William. Grand Duke William didn't dare to be careless when he saw the primogenitor turn into blood dance. He immediately removed the blood prison. New York Temple Restaurant. When Strange returns, help me tell him that starting tomorrow, there will only be 310 blood breeds left in New York. What he needs to do is to get rid of the last 310 vampires. After that, he can return to Kamartaj. Rog said quietly as he looked at Wang, who was secretly eating his midnight snack. Although Ancient One arranged for him to guide Strange, he can't guide him all the time. Both Ancient One and Strange are very clear about this. It's basically enough to take Strange to fight for a few days, and give him some combat advice. Strange is an extremely talented sorcerer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to take over the Time Stone and the title of Sorcerer Supreme from Ancient One in the future. Therefore, to Logue, helping Strange prepare a training environment that was suitable for his current strength was the last bit of help he could provide. Okay, I got it. Wang looked up at Rog, and then continued to destroy the midnight snacks in front of him that can be called heat bombs. No wonder you are getting rounder and rounder. After thinking this in his heart, Rog opened the portal again. On the other side of the portal is Kamartaj in the morning. Before returning to Konoha, he plans to meet Ancient One and confirm the secret of the world mentioned by Kane. Although Kane is unlikely to deceive him in that situation, especially when he knows that he is a student of Ancient One, he still doesn't believe Kane's statement 100%. Kane is a vampire, an old vampire who has lived for who knows how many years. What he said can be believed, but not all of it. In the hall where it is basically impossible to have any visitors at ordinary times, Rog saw Ancient One. To be precise, he saw Ancient One who was making tea and reading a book. Ancient One didn't seem to be surprised at Roger's arrival, and he even prepared a steaming cup of honey tea for him. Sensei. After saying hello to Ancient One, Rog sat opposite her and took a sip of the honey tea. After putting down the honey tea that had basically no change in taste, he told Ancient One about the secret of the world he learned from Kane's mouth, and asked Ancient One about its authenticity. You should already have your own judgment about the answer to this question. What Kane said is basically right, but things are not as bad as he thought. Strictly speaking, hell and heaven are no different from multidimensional dimensions such as the dark dimension. If there is a difference, it is that hell and heaven are a little more active. Since you learned this news from Cain, you should also have a way to go to heaven. There are some records about heaven in the library. If you are interested, you can take it back and have a look." After saying that, Ancient One picked up the Sanskrit book that he had put down and continued to browse. Looking at Ancient One's indifferent expression, Rog frowned slightly. He didn't know if it was his own illusion, but he always felt that both Cain and Ancient One were tempting him to go to heaven to see it in person. After saying goodbye to Ancient One, he did not go to Kamarta's library to look for the ancient books that recorded the information of heaven, but used the portal to return to Konoha's headquarters in Washington. Whether it's heaven or hell, whoever wants to go, he doesn't want to go anyway. After taking a comfortable hot bath, and letting his former personal assistant Sharon Carter give him a massage to relax, he returned to his bedroom, and began to rest for the night. Early the next morning, before he got up, he was awakened by the mechanical synthesized voice of number 3. "Sir, Tony Stark is at the headquarters gate now. Do you want to let him in?" "Tony? What is he doing here?" Rog, who had just gotten up, was too lazy to think about what Tony wanted and said directly to number 3, "Let him in and take him to the living room to wait for me." Chapter 626. It's not like you to get up so early. In his private reception room, Rog took a sip of the freshly brewed black coffee and said to Tani sitting in front of him, "I didn't get up early, I didn't sleep at all. Natasha said that she saw you and Cain on Liberty Island last night. Didn't you say that you didn't plan to fight against the vampires? Why did you suddenly fight with their ancestors?" Tani also picked up the black coffee and took a sip and said slowly, "My teacher arranged a task for me. In order to complete this task as soon as possible, I fought with Cain." Rog didn't hide anything from Tani and said casually, "Your teacher? You have a teacher?" Tani just wanted to ask about Rog's fight with Cain last night, but he didn't expect to hear such news. "Of course I have a teacher, for example, Hinata is my teacher." Although he has no intention of hiding what happened last night, Rog doesn't intend to tell Tani the identity of Ancient One. "Well, I just came here to ask what you did to Cain last night. After the battle between you and Cain last night, the vampires in New York began a large-scale evacuation. Although not all of them were evacuated, it was much less than before. As the current head of Avengers, vampires are now Tani's main job." "It's nothing, I just beat Cain, took some spoils from him, and then made some small conditions for him. The vampires evacuating New York is one of the conditions." Having said that, Rog paused for a moment, and then continued, "You didn't come to me early in the morning just to know this, right? It's only 7 o'clock now." Rog went to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock last night, and now he is in a state of serious lack of sleep. If it weren't for Tani, he would never have planned to get up. Strictly speaking, it's for this. Looking at Rog, who didn't seem to be completely awake, Tani said with a smile, If you don't have anything else, I'll go back to sleep first. You know how to leave, so I won't send you off." After that, Rog stood up and planned to go back to sleep. However, at the moment he stood up, Tani said again, "Well, wait a minute, there are some other things." "What else?" Rog turned to look at Tani. "Jinjin, and the people of Wakanda." Not sure if it was because he felt a little embarrassed, but Tani showed an expression that Rog had never seen before. "Wait, say that again. I'm afraid I misheard you." "I said revive the king and the people of Wakanda," Tony repeated. "This has nothing to do with the Restoration Alliance, right? Or are you working as a lobbyist for the politicians again?" Looking at Tony's expression, Roger revealed a disappointed expression. "It shouldn't be. How did the dignified Iron Man become like this?" "It's not wrong to say that I'm a lobbyist, but it's not what you think." Rog sat down again and motioned to Tani to continue. "Jinjin is my personal request." Although there is still a very small part of Jinjin in circulation on the market, the quantity is different. You now have all the Jinjin in Wakanda, and I hope to buy some from you. Tani's tone began to become serious. "Let's not talk about buying or not. Tell me first, what do you need Jinjin for?" Although Konoha took away all the Jinjin in Wakanda, there was still a part of Jinjin that spread out a long time ago. After all, Wakanda was not so developed from the beginning. They also developed their unique Shinjin technology step by step from scratch. So a long time ago, it was not particularly strange that a part of Shinjin spread out. If Rog remembered correctly, in the Museum of Great Britain, there were some tools made of Shinjin. Of course, the museum did not find this, and it just regarded those Shinjin tools as antiques. After the battle with Kane, I gradually discovered the shortcomings of the Iron Man armor. I'm not saying that I can't develop a better suit, it's just that the materials on the Earth limit this. So if you don't mind, I hope to get some Shinjin from you to develop a new model of battlesuit. Tani directly said his plan without concealing Rog's plan. Rog was silent for a few seconds, and then asked, "Which model of battlesuit have you developed now?" "Number 65. Mark 65? In Rog's memory, the last battlesuit invented by Tani was Mark 85. And before Mark 85, it was Mark 50. However, this was a matter of the parallel universe movie universe, so no one knew if Tony could still invent the Mark 85 that was the same as the one in his memory. After thinking for more than 10 seconds, Rog said again, "I won't sell Shinjin to you." Hearing this, Tani's face dimmed instantly. "How much do you need? Just report the number directly, and I'll have someone send it to the headquarters." Tani wanted to continue to say something, but he didn't expect Rog to give him an unexpected answer. Tani didn't know what to say for a while. "Don't talk about me, it's just some Shinjin, don't worry about it." If someone else came to buy Shinjin, Rog would only let him go out and turn left to leave Konoha. But Tani is different anyway, they are still friends. In the entire Avengers, only Tani and Hulk are his true friends. The problem of Shinjin is solved. Let's talk about the people of Wakanda. This shouldn't be your personal request, right? Rog looked at Tani and said slowly, This is an official request. It's not the White House or the military. It's the request of dozens of countries. You have taken Shinjin, and the land of Wakanda has been given to the werewolves. The people of Wakanda have helped your werewolves build a country that belongs to them. They have already paid enough, so if you don't mind, those countries hope that you can release the people of Wakanda and give them the most basic respect for human rights. Tani also knew that this request was somewhat unreasonable, but there was no other way. The Avengers needed the support of other countries, so he could only bite the bullet and say this to Rog. If I don't release them, will those countries decide to form a joint force to suppress me? Human rights respect. That's a nice way to put it. Even if he used his toes to think, he knew what they were planning. It didn't matter whether people had human rights or not. They wanted nothing more than the technological talents of Wakanda. Chapter 627. The vibranium of Wakanda was indeed taken away by Konoha, but Konoha didn't touch the people of Wakanda. Except for those who died in battle, and those who resisted on the spot, most of the people of Wakanda survived. Even the former king of Wakanda, Black Panther T'Challa, was still alive. It's just that he didn't have the extraordinary power granted by the Black Panther armor and the Black Panther god. He turned from a superhero with strength far beyond ordinary people back to an ordinary person. That's not necessarily the case. They just hope. They didn't say that you must release them. Compared to others, Tani obviously knew Rog a little more. To be precise, Tani was one of the few people in the world who knew Rog's true character. Forcing Rog to release the people of Wakanda, let alone now, even Rog when he first met him would not agree. At that time, although Rog also had extraordinary power, compared to now he at least looked in the category of human at that time. As for now, instead of saying that he was human, it was better to say that he was a god like Thor. So it's just hope. I thought they were ready to go to war with Konoha. Go back and tell them, I won't release the people. If they are dissatisfied, I don't mind them declaring war with Konoha and using force to persuade me. Rog clearly informed Tani of his decision. As for how Tani would convey his decision, he didn't particularly care. Speaking of which, since the last battle of Wakanda, Konoha didn't seem to have any large-scale operations on Earth for a long time. After chatting with Rog for a while, Tani left Konoha in his Audi sports car that already had an automatic driving function. Watching Tani's sports car disappear at the gate of Konoha, Rog said to the ubiquitous number 3. Send a message to number 2. Ask him to prepare 10 tons of vibranium, and send the vibranium to the headquarters before noon tomorrow. In the end, Tony didn't tell him how much vibranium he needed, so he gave Tony 10 tons of vibranium according to the maximum amount he could use. 10 tons of vibranium was more than enough to build a new Iron Man armor. Yes, sir. After instructing number 3, Rog returned to his bedroom with the Flying Thunder God and began to sleep. Time flashed by, and a week passed in the blink of an eye. In this week, in addition to basic life activities such as eating, sleeping, and playing games, Rog only did 3 things. The first was the Rinnegan ninjutsu that Hina long time. And Hina. These ninjutsu unique to Rinnegan were developed by Hina early, but due to the lack of Rinnegan, Rog didn't practice it much. Similarly, he couldn't determine whether these Rinnegan ninjutsu developed by Hina were correct. However, it turned out that Hina was worthy of being a new life evolved from super artificial intelligence. The Rinnegan ninjutsu she derived was no different from the ones in Rog's memory. Of course, this was also because of the lack of reference objects. Anyway, from Rog's point of view, there was nothing wrong with these Rinnegan ninjutsu, and their power was similar to what he remembered. The second thing was that he went to Igo Star and confirmed the final time of the God Tree's maturity with Igo. Earth time, 77 days. This was Igo's reply to him, which was about 2.5 months, which was not much different from the original time. As for the third thing, he went to the original Wakanda, which has now been renamed the Summit of the Mountains by Bran and others. As for why Bran and others gave such a name to their new home, he didn't ask. Anyway, this was the decision of Bran and others. As long as they are happy, it's fine. It was a bit different from what he imagined. After having their own country, Bran and other werewolves didn't continue to live a casual life as he imagined, but seriously built their own country. When he went to the summit of the mountains, Bran and others had built 3 reasonably good cities, and they already had their own laws and currency system. This was something he didn't expect when he gave Wakanda to Bran and others. In addition, the only thing worth paying attention to was that his junior brother Strange finally completed his first actual combat experience and killed all the vampires in New York. However, only 100 vampires died in Strange's hands. As for the rest, they were dealt with by the vampires and the military. So 2 days ago, New York became the only city in the United States without any vampires. After finishing the day's practice of Rinnegan, Rog left Konoha's headquarters and returned to Tatooine. Under the management of Hinata and number 2, Konoha's hidden village on Tatooine was expanded and divided into 2 parts, the inner city and the outer city. The original Konoha hidden village became the current inner city. Outside the inner city, a new outer city was being built in full swing. More importantly, the current Konoha hidden village is no longer an exclusive hidden village of Konoha's people. In the outer city of Konoha Hidden Village, there are many aliens that Rog can't recognize. Since Konoha Hidden Village began interstellar trade, Tatooine has become the most popular emerging planet in the universe. Every day, a large number of intelligent races come to Tatooine, trying to establish a stable trade relationship with Konoha, or directly settle on Tatooine. The reason for this situation is that the weapons, equipment, and technological products developed by Konoha Hidden Village are cheap and are strongly welcomed by other planets. On the other hand, it's because this is the planet of the 4th Hokage. That's right, it's because this is Rog's planet. After learning that Tatooine is Rog's planet, those who heard about his achievements and wanted to see him came to Tatooine one after another. But unfortunately, they didn't even enter the inner city of Konoha's hidden village, let alone see Rog. Although Konoha has now opened interstellar trade, and doesn't exclude people from other planets from coming to Tatooine. But this doesn't mean that they can go anywhere. The inner city of Konoha is one of the areas that they can't enter without permission. Of course, there are some people who don't believe in heresy, and have to provoke some of Konoha's security forces. The end of these guys, without exception, were all sent outside the city to feed the beasts by Konoha's security forces. Chapter 628. He had to say that the feeling of being a hands-off boss was really cool. When he got the black boulder from Jiaying, Rog didn't expect that Tatooine, which was swallowed by the hive to become a barren planet, could develop to this extent. According to the current level of development, Tatooine can't become a well-known fairyland like Asgard, but at least it can become a well-known area of the universe. Very good, very good. Looking at the development of Tatooine and Konoha's hidden village, Rog, sitting in the Hokage's office, nodded with satisfaction. After reading the development plan of Konoha prepared by Hinata and Number 2, he sensed the flying Thor technique on Fenrir. It has been a while since Fenrir swallowed the Black Panther god's divine fragment, and he doesn't know if he has become a god recently. Rog doesn't expect Fenrir to become a god like Black Panther god Bast, but he also hopes that Fenrir can go further. Although Fenrir was still alive and kicking, his lifespan had been swindled back by Loge from Mephisto. If Fenrir can't complete the evolution of life level before the end of his lifespan, then there are basically only two paths left in front of him. The first is to say goodbye to the world again as a lone wolf. The second is to transform into an undead creature. And to transform into an undead creature, he needs the help of the goddess of death, Hel. Rog doesn't have the power of death to help him transform. As for using undead magic to help Fenrir transform, this approach was not in Rog's consideration from the beginning. First of all, he is not proficient in undead magic. Secondly, the undead creatures transformed by undead magic will more or less have the sequelae of a decline in strength and IQ. Fenrir is not a particularly smart demon wolf. If his IQ continues to decline, Rog is worried that he will become a husky sooner or later. After establishing a connection with the flying Thor technique on Fenrir, Rog's figure disappeared directly from the Hokage's office and came to the primitive forest that is more lush than the Amazon forest. Awoo! After seeing Rog's arrival, Fenrir directly stretched out its moist tongue and licked him. However, just as he stuck out his tongue, Rog disappeared in front of him and appeared above his head. Don't lick me. I'll be traumatized if you lick me. Rog didn't reject pet dogs, but for a pet dog of Fenrir's size, it was better not to be licked. Roar! Fenrir let out a low cry, indicating that it understood. How are you digesting the quintessence fragments of the Black Panther god? You can't just stay in the wild and not return to Konoha. Black will miss you. Ever since Fenrir devoured the Black Panther god's quintessence fragment and became extremely energetic, Blackie temporarily abandoned this host and continued to live alone. Awoobawa. Alright, without Xiaohei translating, he simply couldn't understand what Fenrir was saying. Rog shook his head helplessly and switched the Sharingan of his left eye to the Byakugan, and began to see the specific situation of Fenrir. Compared with before, Fenrir's body was not much different except that it was a little stronger. If there was a difference, it was that there was a relatively small energy crystal in Fenrir's brain. This energy crystal was in the shape of a hexagonal crystal, exuding a green light, and its volume was only the size of Rog's finger. In Fenrir's body, he didn't see the quintessence fragments of the Black Panther god Batet, nor did he feel any divine power of the Black Panther god Batet. Something is wrong. It stands to reason that Fenrir should have digested the quintessence fragments of the Black Panther god Batet by now. But the problem is that Fenrir doesn't look like a change in life level. It can't be that cats are incompatible with canines, right? After thinking for a few minutes, Rog gave up thinking. He wasn't proficient in the god system at all. If he didn't happen to understand a little bit in the process of learning magic, his understanding of the god system wouldn't be more than the ordinary people on Earth. Since he couldn't figure it out, then he wouldn't think about it. You have been living here alone for a while. Are you interested in going to Warnerheim and meet your former master, Hela? Rog touched the soft hair on Fenrir's head and said with a smile. However, he didn't expect that after hearing his words, Fenrir suddenly lay down and made a fawning cry for mercy. What's wrong with this guy? After being stunned for a while, he finally reacted. Fenrir, this stupid wolf, thought that he was testing him again. I'm not testing you, I'm serious. I don't know what's going on with your current situation. Hela is your former master, she may know how to deal with your current problem. After hearing his explanation, Fenrir stood up again and let out an excited howl. Okay, then it's decided. I'll take you to Warnerheim in a few days and see how to solve your problem. After patting Fenrir's big head, Rog returned to the Hokage's office with the Flying Thunder God. The matter with Fenrir has come to an end for the time being, so the next thing is naturally to consult Hinata's opinion. Although Hinata basically won't violate his decision if he asks. But this kind of thing, it's better to respect Hinata's decision. This has nothing to do with identity, strength, gender, or anything, it's purely a respect from the heart. Hinata's office is next to the Hokage's office. Her current identity is not the Hokage's assistant, but the Minister of Administration and the Elder of Konoha Hidden Village. The administration was originally an institution to assist the Hokage in managing Konoha's government affairs, but because Rog ignored the specific affairs all year round, these things were handed over to Hinata. It's worth mentioning that the artificial intelligence system No. 2-inch of Konoha Hidden Village is also a member of the administration. In terms of organization, it belongs to the Deputy Minister of the Administration. This kind of thing is an abnormal phenomenon on Earth, but in the universe, it's nothing. The ruler of the Kari Empire, one of the 3 empires in the universe, the Supreme Intelligence, is a life computer, and Worldmind, the master behind Xander's New Star Regiment, is also a super life computer. Therefore, the fact that the artificial intelligence number 2 is the Deputy Minister of the Administration of Konoha Hidden Village is not particularly strange for people of other planets. In other words, if Konoha Hidden Village, which has opened interstellar trade, doesn't even have such a super artificial intelligence, that's abnormal. After all, the energy and computing ability of flesh and blood creatures have limits, and special existences such as artificial intelligence are the best assistants of flesh and blood creatures in the era of interstellar civilization. Chapter 629. Warnerheim. Captain, when do you think those frost giants and flame giants will leave Warnerheim? The war has been in a stalemate for so long, they should be thinking about retreating by now. A young Asgard soldier wearing light silver armor asked the captain walking in front of him. How would I know? I'm not the commander of the frost giants and flame giants. The captain with a huge scar on his face replied helplessly. Ever since the goddess of death Hela brought the frost giants and flame giants to Warnerheim, Warnerheim was completely lively. It wasn't just Warner Protoss that was dragged into the quagmire of war. Even Asgard's army was dragged into the quagmire of war. What was even more troublesome was that the goddess of death Hela's army didn't care if they were facing Warner Protoss's army or Asgard's army. They would launch wild beast-like attacks. Only the goddess of death Hela could declare war on both Warner Protoss and Asgard with 2 armies of frost giants and flame giants. What was even more surprising was that Hela's frost giants and flame giants army actually suppressed the Warner Protoss and Asgard's army. Just when the young Asgard soldier with a spear was about to continue asking his captain, a portal with a diameter of more than 20 meters and shining with golden sparks appeared not far in front of them. Everyone on guard. As soon as this huge golden portal was formed, the captain of this patrol team gave the order for everyone to be on guard, and clenched the 1-meter-long greatsword in his hand. Frost giants? Or flame giants? When all the Asgard soldiers stared at this huge golden portal, a huge wolf head with glossy black fur stretched out from the portal. Then, a huge black wolf with a height of 5 to 6 meters and a body length of more than 10 meters walked out of the portal. This is? When seeing this huge black wolf, the captain of the patrol team suddenly frowned. In just a few seconds, he recognized the origin of this huge black wolf. This is the giant wolf Fenrir, the mount of the 4th Hokage Rog. The giant wolf Fenrir, who was once the mount of the goddess of death, was resurrected by the 4th Hokage Rog and became his mount. This was not a secret in the first place. Furthermore, after reviving Fenrir, Rog also rode Fenrir to participate in Jotunheim's crusade against the goddess of death Hel. Most of the Asgard warriors who participated in that war had seen Fenrir. Even if he didn't want to, he had no choice. As long as the huge Fenrir appeared on the battlefield, he would definitely become the focus of attention. Don't do anything, it's 4th Hokage Rog's mount Fenrir. After hearing the captain's warning, the other Asgard soldiers in the patrol team let out a sigh of relief. The 4th Hokage and their current king Thor are good friends. This is a well-known fact in Asgard. When the amazing Fenrir came out of the portal, Rog and Hinata also came out of the portal. Rog originally planned to ride Fenrir, but after thinking about it, he dispelled the idea. He and Hinata just came to Warnerheim to relax, not to fight. There is no need to ride Fenrir. And always using Fenrir as a mount is not conducive to Fenrir's mental health growth. Asgard's patrol team? As soon as he stepped out of the portal, Rog saw the Asgard patrol team with less than 10 people. Why are you here? I remember that the nearest camp should be more than 10 kilometers away, right? Rog came to the patrol team's captain and asked in confusion. When opening the portal, he deliberately chose a location far away from the camp. As a result, he didn't expect to run into Asgard's patrol team as soon as he came out. Sir, you are right. The camp is indeed more than 10 kilometers away. The recent battle has been a bit stalemate, so the general asked us to expand the scope of the patrol. The patrol captain replied respectfully as if he was talking to a superior officer. Although Rog doesn't have any position in Asgard now, the patrol team's captain still doesn't dare to be disrespectful to him. This has nothing to do with whether Rog and Thor are good friends or not. It's purely because of his terrifying strength. No matter when, a strong person is worthy of respect. So that's how it is. Sir, do you want to go to the camp? If necessary, we can help you lead the way. The patrol team's captain continued. No, I just came here to take a look. You can continue to patrol, don't worry about me. After saying that, Rog waved to Fenrir and disappeared in front of the patrol team with Hinata and Fenrir. After leaving the forest where the patrol team was located, Rog used chakra perception. Although he has been to Warnerheim several times, every time he came, it was basically a battle. The only exception was when he went to seek help from Hela. After using chakra perception to confirm the location of the nearest city, his body flashed with a brilliant aurora-like light. In a few seconds, these brilliant lights completely enveloped them. Quantum transmission. The brilliant aurora-like light flashed, and the figures of Rog and others completely disappeared. Red Rock City. This is the nearest city that appeared in Rog's perception. And in this city, he didn't perceive any life signals of frost giants and flame giants. This means that this city is still under the rule of Warner Protoss. Rog didn't directly teleport Hinata and Fenrir to the city, but teleported to the vicinity of Red Rock City. Fenrir, get down. Before entering the city, he needs to help himself and Fenrir disguise themselves. He has a good reputation in Asgard, which means that his reputation in Warner Protoss is very bad. In order to avoid some unpleasant things, mainly because he doesn't want to ruin his and Hinata's trip, he intends to change his appearance to enter the city. As for Fenrir, not many people in Warner Protoss have seen Fenrir. But the problem is that Fenrir's size is too big, and letting him enter the city in his true form is not small. When Fenrir lay on the ground and pointed his big head at Rog, Rog raised his right hand and put his palm on Fenrir's head. Ninjutsu. Orc transformation. Boom. A huge white smoke appeared out of thin air and completely enveloped Fenrir. When the smoke dissipated, Fenrir, who was severely reduced in size, appeared in front of Rog. Regarding how to solve the problem of Fenrir's too big body, Rog finally gave up the idea of using magic and studied ninjutsu instead. Chapter 630. Orc Transformation. This is just a name that Rog casually came up with. Anyway, this ninjutsu will only be used on Fenrir. He won't use it on anyone else. If you want to use this ninjutsu, there is a prerequisite, and that is to use it with your summon beast. Through the connection between yourself and the summon beast, you can help the summon beast who doesn't know ninjutsu to use the transformation jutsu. This is the effect of orc transformation. Beast refers to the summon beast. Human refers to the ninja who uses the jutsu. Transformation is the effect of this jutsu. Simple and crude name, simple and crude effect. After Rog and Fenrir used the orc transformation together, Fenrir's body size changed from more than 10 meters to more than 1 meter, looking no different from an ordinary wolf in the wild. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with the shrunken Fenrir, Rog used the transformation jutsu. Boom. After the white smoke dissipated, he turned into Minato. Okay, let's go. Although Minato's appearance is not as good as his original appearance, Rog didn't care too much about this. And Hinata isn't the kind of superficial person who cares about appearances. Not to mention that he just turned into Minato. Even if he turned into Danzo, Hinata wouldn't mind at all. But at that time, it will be Rog himself who will mind. After changing his appearance, he took Hinata and the shrunken Fenrir to Red Rock City. After paying a few gold coins at the city gate, they successfully entered the city famous for its Red Rock, Oregon. Since he took Hinata to Warnerheim for a tour, Rog certainly didn't forget to make some preparations in advance. Red Rock is one of the unique resources of Warnerheim. Compared with ordinary rocks, Red Rock has a certain affinity with magic, and is suitable for building magic-related buildings such as mage towers or large magic formations. Because of the outbreak of war everywhere, Red Rock City, which is far away from the front line, inevitably has some atmosphere. Not long after entering Red Rock City, Rog and the others encountered 3 heavily armed patrol teams. It seems that the people of Warnerheim are not doing well recently. Rog said with a sigh. The ones who suffer the most in war are always these ordinary people. Hinata turned to look at the lifeless residents of Red Rock City and said slowly, Fenrir also expressed its opinion. Forget it, this is not something we can interfere with. After that, Rog held Hinata's hand and walked towards the business district of Red Rock City. Traveling was basically inseparable from the 4 basic principles of eating, drinking, and playing. If they weren't here for sightseeing, then going to the business district was definitely a good choice. Unlike the cities on Earth, Red Rock City, or rather most of the cities in Warnerheim, retained a more pure style. The buildings in the city weren't very tall, and the shops weren't very big either. This was especially true for the taverns and weapon shops, which made Roger feel like he had returned to the Middle Ages in Europe. Of course, in terms of time, it should be the Middle Ages in Europe that referenced the style of Warnerheim. In a tavern called Afterglow of the Sunset, Rog said to the waiter standing beside him, "Give me one of your signature dishes and a bottle of your best liquor." After that, Rog gave the waiter a few gold coins. Although Warnerheim isn't Earth, gold is still the hard currency here. However, gold can only be regarded as a relatively common currency, while energy crystals are the real high-grade currency. Whether it's these gold coins or energy crystals, Rog has a lot of them in his summon scroll, enough for him and Hinata to squander in Warnerheim. "Sir, do you want to prepare some food for your pet?" The waiter put the gold coins in his pocket with a smile, and continued to ask. No need. Although Fenrir now looked like an ordinary wild wolf, his body was still that of an astonishingly huge wolf. The amount of food prepared by the tavern can't even be regarded as snacks for Fenrir. "Yes, sir." After having an authentic Warnerheim lunch with Hinata, Rog took Hinata and Fenrir out of the tavern. However, not long after they left the tavern, a team of armored Warner Protoss soldiers stopped in front of them. "Your wolf is good, I'll take it," a knight riding a dragon condescendingly said to Rog. Then he threw a bag of gold coins to Rog. Isn't this development a bit casual? I'm just here for a vacation." Rog didn't answer, nor did he catch the bag of gold coins thrown to him. Just when the bag full of gold coins was about to be thrown to him, an invisible barrier blocked the way of the bag. Clang! Clang! The gold coins fell out of the pouch and clattered to the ground. The scattered gold coins suddenly attracted the attention of the surrounding pedestrians, and the face of the knight on the dragon became gloomy. "You don't know what's good for you." The knight on the dragon snorted coldly. At the same time, the Warner Protoss soldiers blocking the way of Rog and others pulled out their swords. Looking at the actions of these soldiers, Rog helplessly shook his head, then said to Fenrir, "Fenrir, teach them a lesson, don't kill them." Rog didn't expect that he, who just came to Red Rock City for a vacation, would encounter such a thing that only happens in novels. After hearing Rog's order, Fenrir excitedly howled. Then, he found that he was still in the form of a small wolf. Rog didn't remove the transformation technique on Fenrir. In fact, dealing with these soldiers doesn't need to let Fenrir show his true form. "Kill this guy, leave the wolf and the woman." The knight on the dragon gave the order to attack. In the beginning, his attention was on Fenrir. When he seriously looked at Rog, he found Hinata standing behind Rog. So his target changed from Fenrir to Fenrir and Hinata. Has the knight education of Warner Protoss fallen to this point? Looking at the greedy eyes of the Dragon Knight, Rog decided to give this guy who came out of nowhere a little unforgettable education. Genjutsu, Naruto technique. Rog, who stood in the same place, didn't even raise his hand, and the Naruto technique, which can let the victim see the most terrifying thing in his heart, fell on the Dragon Knight. At the same time, the smaller Fenrir, like a black shadow, rushed to the Warner Protoss soldier in front of him. Chapter 631. Rog heard an indescribable scream after throwing the Hell's View that could only see the most terrifying scene in one's heart onto the knight in golden armor. The sudden scream of the Earth Dragon Knight not only startled Rog, but also the Warner Protoss soldiers. The scream even made them ignore Fenrir, who was attacking like lightning. Chi. Although Fenrir was also startled by the scream, his movements were not affected in the slightest. Like a shadow, he pounced on a Warner Protoss soldier. Without Roger's order, there would only be one way for Fenrir to deal with these Vanir soldiers, and that was to bite them to death, one at a time, and directly bite these ignorant fellows to death. Especially the guy riding the Earth Dragon Knight. By me? Are you kidding me? I'm the great wolf Fenrir who fought in the 9 worlds, a terrifying monster that shook the earth. The Earth Dragon Knight's scream became the background sound of Fenrir's battle. It only took Fenrir more than 10 seconds to dispose of the fully armed Warner Protoss soldiers, making them completely lose their fighting power. A war. After defeating the team of mediocre Warner Protoss soldiers, Fenrir raised his head and howled. Then, with a look of disdain, he returned to Rog's side. It wasn't until Fenrir returned to his side that Rog removed the illusion on the Earth Dragon Knight, putting an end to that incomparably miserable cry. Hoo-hoo-hoo. After the effect of the Hell's View disappeared, the Earth Dragon Knight's consciousness also returned to the real world, gasping for breath. When he finally calmed down the fear in his heart, he saw a scene that he never imagined. A whole team of fully armed Warner Protoss soldiers, without exception, were all lying on the ground. Bright red blood stained the surrounding ground, and the well-made weapons and armors were either completely broken or severely damaged. What's going on? How is this possible? As the commander of this team, the Earth Dragon Knight was very clear about the strength of the team. Although the number of people in the team was not large, every one of them was a veteran with rich combat experience for many years. Even if they encountered a frost giant or a flame giant of the same number, this team had the confidence to win. Although the Earth Dragon Knight's conduct was not very good, his eyesight was not bad. Just by glancing at the wounds on these soldiers, he judged that Fenrir was the only one who did it. The wounds on these soldiers were all caused by the bites of wild beasts, and without exception, they were all attacked once. Was it all done by that wolf? Thinking of this, the Earth Dragon Knight looked at Fenrir and Log with a grave expression. If a tamed magical beast already possessed such terrifying strength, then what kind of strength would the person who tamed this magical beast possess? The Earth Dragon Knight unconsciously swallowed his saliva. This is troublesome. Although the Earth Dragon Knight didn't say a word, his expression revealed his panic and fear at this time. After looking at Rog and Fenrir for a few seconds without saying a word, the Earth Dragon Knight made a move that any normal person would do. Run. Run immediately. The Earth Dragon Knight didn't hesitate. His right hand suddenly exerted force and directly pulled the reins of the Earth Dragon, trying to ride the Earth Dragon away from here. The moment he pulled the reins, Rog whistled at Fenrir. Although Fenrir didn't stay with Rog for a long time, in any case, he was Rog's psychic beast. The moment he heard Rog's whistle, Fenrir understood his meaning. Woo-woo. Fenrir didn't howl to the sky like before, but bared his teeth and let out a low cry. Fenrir's low cry wasn't loud, and it might not be heard if one was a little further away. But in the next second after he let out a low cry, that nearly 2 meters tall and 5 to 6 meters long drake suddenly fell to the ground as if it had met its natural predator. No matter how the knight on its back urged it to move, it didn't move at all. You want to leave without saying a word, isn't that a bit impolite? If it was any other time, Rog wouldn't have bothered to pay attention to an existence like the Earth Dragon Knight. But now he didn't intend to let this guy off so easily. The armor on the Earth Dragon Knight wasn't ordinary goods. The workmanship was excellent, and the material was rare. More importantly, it was a set of enchanted armor. And on the chest position of the armor, there was a certain family emblem engraved. This guy was a noble child, and a descendant of a powerful family. It wasn't difficult to infer this from the arrogance this guy showed just now, as well as the team he brought with him. The Warner Protoss soldiers lying on the ground weren't ordinary goods, but regular soldiers. Don't look at how they only lasted for more than 10 seconds in front of Fenrir. That was because the difference in strength between them and Fenrir was too great. What do you want? No matter how hard he tried, the Earth Dragon Knight wasn't willing to stand up, so the knight in golden armor finally spoke. It's not what I want, but what are you going to do? I just finished eating with my woman, and as soon as I went out, I met a man who wanted to sell my wolf. If I didn't agree, this guy would kill me and take away my woman and my wolf. You tell me, if you encountered such a thing, what would you do? Rog said as he walked toward the Earth Dragon Knight. When he passed by the soldiers lying on the ground, he jumped lightly, crossing the soldiers and the bloodstains on the ground. I can compensate you. No matter what you want, I can compensate you. The Earth Dragon Knight immediately said, for fear that he would anger Rog if he spoke too slowly. Rog didn't answer, but continued to walk toward him with a smile. I can apologize to you. As long as you agree, I will immediately apologize to you. The Earth Dragon Knight continued to say, but Rog was still unmoved, and even his pace didn't change in the slightest. You can't touch me. The female Thor Vigtigni and Weigelf are my cousins. If you dare to touch me, they won't spare you. The Earth Dragon Knight almost shouted this sentence. Vigtigni and Weigelf? Rog stopped moving forward, and looked at the Earth Dragon Knight with a smile. Is there no one else in Warner Protoss? How come it's these two sisters again? Seeing that Rog finally stopped, the Earth Dragon Knight finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that it's okay, I'm saved. Thinking of this, the arrogant look of the Earth Dragon Knight slowly emerged on his face. Chapter 632. Did this guy learn how to change his face? Looking at the Earth Dragon Knight's arrogant expression, Rog shook his head helplessly. No matter which world it was, there would always be such self-righteous guys. So the twins Thor are your cousins. Interesting. But I'm a little curious. Do they know that they have a cousin who is running amok outside? Vigtigni and Weigelf could be regarded as the Warner Protoss that Rog knew the most. Although some unpleasant things would happen every time they met, they were still considered acquaintances no matter what. What do you mean by that? The Earth Dragon Knight realized that things didn't seem to develop as he imagined. In his opinion, Rog would be more or less respectful after knowing that Vigtigni and Weigelf were his cousins. But now, it seemed that things weren't going as he imagined. Nothing. I'm just a little curious. If I remember correctly, the two sisters are very reasonable people. They definitely won't bully others with their power. After hearing Rog's words, the Earth Dragon Knight gradually put away his arrogant expression. Even until now, he still didn't know who Rog was. But from Rog's tone, he seemed to be very familiar with Vigtigni and Weigelf. Could it be that he's a cousin's friend? The Earth Dragon Knight couldn't help but have this thought. No, it shouldn't be. Although the Earth Dragon Knight hadn't seen Vigtigni for a while, he was still the cousin of the two sisters. He knew his cousins quite well. If Vigtigni and Wendy really had a particularly close friend of the opposite sex, it was impossible that he hadn't heard of it. Just when the Earth Dragon Knight was about to ask for Rog's name, the city guards of Red Rock City finally arrived at the scene. Since there was a battle in the city, these city guards had to come to the scene no matter what. It didn't take long for over 100 Warner Protoss warriors to surround Rog's group and the Drake Knights. Then, a knight in black armor riding a warhorse came to the two of them. One only needed to look at the black armor on this knight to know that he was the commander of this city guard. Who made the first move? The Black Knight said after sizing up Rog and the young man. It's him. He attacked first. Without any hesitation, the Earth Dragon Knight pointed at Rog and said loudly. Then he continued to say to the Black Knight, I'm Thor Vigtigni and Weigelf from the Golden Thorns family. I'm the third successor of the LYSS family, the cousin of the female Thor. I'm the captain of the 12th Squad of the 3rd Night Division of the Blue Ocean Legion. I was ordered to return to the capital, but I bumped into this guy when I passed by Red Rock City. In the end, his magic beast started attacking my entourage. Well done. Thomas Ly's self-introduction and distortion of black and white could be considered to be at the level of a master of perfection. Is what he said true? After listening to Thomas Lyss's story, the Black Knight looked down at Rog and asked, "If you think it's true, then it's true." Rog replied with a calm face. Anyone with a normal brain and eyes would know what was going on with a single glance. Not to mention, there were so many bystanders present. Then you're admitting to Sir Lyss's words. The Black Knight continued with a serious tone. Sir Lyss? Rog thought that the Black Knight would be more tactful, but he didn't expect him to say it so openly. But this was normal. Compared to the noble Thomas Lyss, it was easier to manipulate him with an unknown background. Alright, I won't pretend anymore. I was the one who attacked first. I had lunch today and was in a good mood, so I let my magic beast attack a group of regular soldiers to liven things up. When he mentioned the regular army, Rog purposely emphasized his words. Since you've admitted to your atrocities, then follow me to the city guard station. Men, take them away. The Black Knight on the warhorse immediately gave the order, but the city guards surrounding Rog and the others did not seem to have heard his order at all. They just stood there motionlessly. What are you waiting for? Do it. The Black Knight's tone became displeased as he shouted. But even so, the city guards under him didn't move. Don't waste your energy. Without my permission, they can't even move a finger. Rog looked up at the Black Knight and said slowly. Then he continued to walk towards Thomas Lyss. Oh right, I advise you not to draw your sword. You can't bear the consequences. The Black Knight's right hand had just grabbed the hilt of his sword when Rog's voice sounded again. But obviously, this Black Knight was not the kind of person who would be obedient. He suddenly pulled out the sword from his waist and squeezed the horse's abdomen with his legs, driving the warhorse to attack Rog. Wind release Great Sickle Weasel. In an instant, a storm was born out of thin air, and the sickle weasel-like wind blades slashed through the Black Knight's body one after another. Boom. This sudden storm only lasted for a short 2 to 3 seconds before it came to an abrupt end. The Black Knight who was riding a tall warhorse towards Rog fell to the ground with the warhorse, and his right hand holding the sword rolled a few times on the ground. As the initiator of all this, Rog didn't even look at the Black Knight whose right hand was cut off and went directly to Thomas Lyss. Tell me, if I cripple you, will your family hunt me down regardless of the consequences? After hearing Rog's question, Thomas Lyss's attention was taken back from the Black Knight who had his hand cut off, and he looked at Rog in shock and confusion. Forget it, looking at your terrified look, you probably don't know the answer. After that, Rog raised his right hand and made it into the shape of a pistol. Water release. Water iron cannon technique. Bang 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 bang. In an instant, Rog fired 4 chakra liquid bullets, piercing Thomas's armor and breaking his limbs. Ah! Thomas's screams echoed throughout the street again. After doing these things, Rog ignored the screaming Thomas and the Black Knight who had his hand cut off. He came to Hinata and Fenrir's side, and used quantum teleportation to leave Red Rock City. When the beautiful aurora-like radiance completely disappeared, the city guards who had been immobilized by him regained the right to move. His journey to Red Rock City ended much earlier than he had expected. His originally good mood had been dampened quite a bit. Chapter 633. Warner Protoss's Royal City, the City of Honor. At this time, a week has passed since the episode in Red Rock City. During this week, Rog took Hinata and Fenrir to several well-known cities under the rule of Warner Protoss, and had a pleasant physical and mental journey. And Warner Protoss's Royal City, the City of Honor, was the last stop in his plan. After breaking all 4 of Thomas's limbs, Logue received a bounty from the Lays family of the Golden Thorns as he wished. And he wasn't the only one who was wanted. Hinata and Fenrir were also on the list. Although the wanted notice of the three of them spread to all the cities under the rule of Warner Protoss, it didn't cause any trouble for his trip. Transformation jutsu once again proved its value. Rog turned himself into the appearance of Jiraiya. Of course, it was the young Jiraiya, not the old lecherous and wretched guy. And Hinata, at his request, turned into the fifth Hokage, the legendary Sannin, the young Tsunadeheim. As for Fenrir, he used the orc transformation jutsu to turn into a tall red toad with black stripes. As for its own toad form, Fenrir appropriately expressed its own opinion. But because of the language barrier, his suggestion was temporarily put on hold. So a different traveling group appeared in Warnerheim. A white-haired young man with a proud blonde girl sitting on the back of a huge red toad, traveling to various well-known cities in Warnerheim. At first, Rog was a little worried that the huge red toad Fenrir transformed into would be a bit too unusual. But it turned out that in a country with a long history and has opened the universal era, huge creatures are not unusual. Apart from having to pay a higher entrance fee for Fenrir, the red toad that Fenrir had transformed into didn't encounter any problems. Are you sure you don't want to see the two sisters Vigdigni and Weigelf? I heard that someone captured them more than once. Since Hinata heard the names of Vigdigni and Weigelf from Tomas, their names were mentioned almost every day by Hinata. Especially after knowing that Rog defeated and captured them twice, Hinata teased Rog from time to time. What's more, in a city she traveled to before, Hinata also bought several popular novels that had no factual basis at all. The story of the fourth Hokage and the twin girls Thor 2. Becoming a ninja starts by defeating the female Thor. Ninja don't wave. Rog didn't expect that Warner Protoss's novels' novels were no worse than Earth's. And unlike the novels on Earth, Warner Protoss's novels not only don't have the so-called 404, but the important plot also comes with its own illustrations. This is too much. Warner Protoss's Cultural Supervision Department's workload is seriously not enough. Since Hinata bought these novels, Rog found that he completely lost the right to explain. No matter what he said, Hinata would look at him with the kind of "oh, so that's how it is" look. After trying several times, he gave up the intention to explain. Do whatever you want, I didn't do it anyway. I, Rog, am not afraid of a crooked shadow. Then if you don't mind, I'll go to their house tonight? Since it's useless to explain, then he'll do the opposite. Rog doesn't believe that Hinata will really agree to let him stay at Vigdigni's house for the night. Okay, if you want to go, then go. Looking at the young Tsunadeheim, Hinata gritted her teeth and said with a smile. Rog felt that he seemed to have gone a little too far on the edge of death. Hey, look, there's a bald head outside. Rog, who has experienced many battles, of course, won't be so easily fooled and immediately changed the topic. After enjoying a luxurious lunch in this famous tavern in the capital, Rog and Hinata left the tavern and took Fenrir, who had nothing to do in the Mount parking area. The waiter of the tavern certainly didn't forget to prepare food for Fenrir. It's just that what was placed in front of him were some toad meals that were in line with his current identity. After strolling around King City's commercial district for the whole afternoon, Roger and the others finally returned to the hotel. Even if he has the strength close to the Heavenly Father level, shopping is still a bit too painful for a man. Now Roger felt that he was more tired than fighting with Thanos. And Hinata, who also shopped for an afternoon, was full of energy playing with her spoils today. Just when Rog was thinking about whether he should go to the hotel bar for a drink, a knock suddenly sounded on the door. After opening the door, he saw a hotel waiter in a fine uniform. Mr. Jiraiya, hello, sorry to disturb you. There will be a small auction tonight at the auction house next door. If you don't mind, you can go and take a look with the madam. This is the invitation to the auction. After that, the waiter handed a black invitation and auction booklet to Rog with both hands. Okay, I got it. After receiving the auction invitation and auction booklet from the waiter, Rog closed the door and opened the auction booklet to take a look. These auction items are good. Although he doesn't know the history of Warner Protoss, the introduction in the booklet still made him quite excited. There's an auction tonight, and it looks good. Are you interested in taking a look? After returning to the bedroom, Rog handed the invitation and booklet in his hand to Hinata, who was trying on clothes. You decide, I'm fine with anything. Compared with the auction, Hinata was obviously more interested in the clothes and jewelry she just bought. Then let's go and take a look. Anyway, I have nothing to do. Rog glanced at Hinata, who was trying on a black deep V-neck backless dress, and returned to the living room board. At night, Rog, who changed into the traditional Warnerheim clothes, and Hinata came to the auction house next to the hotel, and walked into this particularly large and famous auction house. The name of the auction house is very ordinary, called the Lost Treasure House. However, behind this ordinary name, the auction house had a legendary history. It is said that this place once auctioned the weapon of a Warner Protoss god, as well as the divinity of a powerful god. Chapter 634. Whether it's the weapon of the God King or the divine spark, both are existences that can only be found by chance. In fact, so far, Rog only knows of two God King weapons. One is Odin's Gungnir, and the other is the Storm Battleaxe that has not yet been created. Needless to say, the power of the Gungnir is undeniable. Odin can make a name for himself in the universe because of the Gungnir. As for the Storm Battleaxe, although it hasn't been born yet, in other parallel universes, it blocked the attack of the All-Gem Infinity Gauntlet and cut off the head of Thanos. If it's divided by combat power, the God King's weapon can allow an existence at the level of a Heavenly Father to compete with a Heavenly Father. Of course, the premise of all this is that the God King's weapon is willing to recognize the existence of the user. If the God King's weapon represents part of the power of the God King, then the divine spark that has the potential to be promoted to a greater divine power represents the possibility of becoming a God King. No matter where this auction house called the Lost Treasure House got these two things, it can only prove one thing. That is, there is definitely a big person behind this auction house. If there is no accident, that person is either the current God King of Warner Protoss, Njord, or the mother of the two Victigny sisters, Gulwig. Apart from the two of them, Rog can't think of anyone else in Warner Protoss who can do this. This is why he decided to take Hinata to have a look after reading the introduction of this auction house. He wasn't here for the elven girl from Alfheim that was auctioned tonight. Definitely not. Under the guidance of the staff, Rog and Hinata came to a box on the second floor. Something is wrong. When the staff repeatedly explained that this is their seat tonight, Rog frowned. Although he has been spending money like a nouveau riche in the capital these 2 days, it's only limited to accompanying Hinata. After entering the capital, not only did he not show his strength in front of others, but he also deliberately hid his energy fluctuations and aura, pretending to be an ordinary Warner Protoss. What happened? After seeing the puzzled look on Rog's face, Hinata immediately asked, "Something's wrong. For an auction of this scale, how could we, two outsiders without any foundation, be arranged in a VIP box of this level? Moreover, the admission card we used was a gift from the hotel." After hearing Rog's explanation, Hinata also noticed that something was wrong, and was about to activate her Byakugan. Hinata was about to mobilize chakra when Rog stopped her. "There's no need. Just wait patiently. The person who arranged this room for us will definitely show up tonight." After saying that, Rog pulled Hinata to the only 2 chairs in the box and sat down indifferently. Compared to the hall on the first floor, the rooms on the second floor not only had a wider view, but they also had a series of magic arrays, including soundproof magic arrays. These magic arrays allowed the rooms to be independent, comfortable, and free from external interference. When the magic clock in the hall turned to Hour of the Wolf, which represented 8 o'clock in the evening in Warnerheim, the auction began on time. A female auctioneer with an impressive figure in a long red dress walked up to the auction stage in a flirtatious manner. She used a seductive voice to make the opening remarks. Rog didn't care too much about what the female auctioneer said. His eyes were now fixed on the red dress of the auctioneer. This split is really bold. Whether it's the chest or the thigh, it can be said to be in the extreme position. I admire the designer of this dress. After the regular opening remarks, the auction entered the main topic. After receiving the brochure for tonight's auction, Roger already knew what items would be auctioned tonight. There were a total of 3 items that he was slightly interested in tonight. The first one was the elven girl from Alfheim. The second one was the sword in the stone. It was said that a certain Warner Protoss adventurer had brought it back from Earth. As for whether or not this sword in the stone was the one in his memories, Rog was unable to confirm. The third item was a silver surfboard. In the auction booklet, there was not much information about this silver surfboard. On a certain night, this silver surfboard fell from the sky and landed in Warnerheim. It was picked up by a farmer couple. Later, the auction house bought this silver surfboard from the farmer couple. According to the auction house's tests, this silver surfboard, which was as smooth as mercury, could give the user a certain degree of physique enhancement and the ability to fly. Other than that, there was no other information about it. When he saw this silver surfboard in the auction booklet, Rog thought of a person he had never seen before. The Silver Surfer, or rather the Silver Shadow Man. In terms of appearance, this silver surfboard did look like the Silver Shadow Man's surfboard. However, if this was really the Silver Shadow Man's surfboard, then the ability of this surfboard was definitely not as simple as what was written in the auction booklet. Warner Protoss may not know who the Silver Shadow Man was, but Rog knew all about him. The Silver Shadow Man, whose real name was Norin Ride, was an astronomer on a planet outside the Milky Way galaxy. When this planet was chosen by the Great Planet Devourer, Norin Ride, who was not yet the Silver Shadow Man, used himself to serve the planet Devourer. In exchange for finding other suitable planets, he begged the planet Devourer to let his home planet go. The planet Devourer accepted Norin's offer and gave him a powerful cosmic energy. Thus, the Silver Surfer was born. The moment he became the Silver Surfer, Norin's memories, good and evil, conscience and morals disappeared. When the planet Devourer ordered him to find planets that could be eaten, the Silver Surfer first pointed to his home planet. However, the planet Devourer still had some conscience. He did not devour the Silver Surfer's home planet. Instead, he said something that was not divine at all, but was very human. I made a promise with a respectable person that I can't eat that planet. During his time in the universe, Rog heard the name of the planet Devourer. However, he did not know if it was because of good luck or bad luck. But he never met this famous Uncle Tun. While Rog was thinking about whether the silver surfboard auctioned tonight was the Silver Shadow Man's surfboard, the elf girl from Alfheim was pushed onto the auction stage. Chapter 635. Even Rog, who was used to seeing beautiful women, couldn't help but feel a trace of amazement at the first sight of this elf girl. Light blonde hair that was slightly curled, a face that all male creatures would want to protect, and that delicate body that was just right to match her face perfectly. Is this the elf of Alfheim? Rog silently sighed in his heart. Not only did he feel this way, but the people sitting in the hall on the first floor also made a burst of exclamations. Without the auctioneer's introduction, the price of the elf girl's auction could rise at a terrifying speed. In less than a minute, the price of the elf girl's auction rose from 10,000 magic crystal coins to 120,000 magic crystal coins. Magic crystal coins are the highest level of currency in Warnerheim. The exchange price with ordinary gold is roughly between 1 to 10,000. Of course, this exchange price is not stable and will fluctuate freely around 10,000. Like now, when the war broke out on the front line, the exchange price is about 1 to 12,000. The reason why Rog was so clear was that he had just exchanged 2 days ago. However, he didn't exchange gold coins for magic crystal coins, but used Asgard's magic crystals for magic crystal coins. Before the start of the trip, he went to Asgard and took some magic crystals from Thor. He originally planned to take some of Warnerheim's magic crystal coins, but found that Asgard's Golden Palace didn't have many magic crystal coins, so he took the next best thing. These magic crystals weren't taken for free, mainly because he didn't want to take advantage of his friends. For these magic crystals, he asked Konoha Hidden Village to send a batch of vibranium that was enough for Asgard to use for 10 years. Now in his summon scroll, there are about 1,300,000 magic crystal coins and a batch of Asgard's magic crystals that have not been exchanged yet. Fortunately, he exchanged the magic crystal coins in the capital city, otherwise, he may not be able to complete the exchange so smoothly. 150,000 magic crystals. 160,000. 180,000. The price of the elf girl's auction was still rising, but so far, the bidders were the guests on the first floor. Could it be that the guests on the second floor were also noble? Rog curiously looked at the surrounding rooms. Due to the magic array, he could not see through the one-way magic barrier. He could only guess that there were guests in those rooms. Although he could still use chakra to sense if there was anyone in these rooms, he resisted the urge to do so in order to avoid unnecessary trouble. This was the capital city of the Warner Protoss. In this place, there was no lack of people who could sense chakra. The little girl down there is quite pitiful, don't you think? Rog glanced at Hinata and said casually, "Little girl? She's an elf. She's at least a few times older than you, maybe even 10 times older." After traveling in Warnerheim for a while, Hinata was no longer an ordinary person who knew nothing about the 9 realms. Although she hadn't been to Asgard and Jotunheim, her understanding of the 9 realms was far beyond that of ordinary people on Earth. Things like age have to be combined with the lifespan of the species itself. Judging from the lifespan of the elves, the elf down there is indeed a little girl. At most, she has just reached adulthood. But looking at her scared look now, the possibility of her being underage is higher. Rog explained his point of view. "Okay, don't say so much. You just want to participate in the auction? If you want to bid, then bid. Anyway, men are creatures who only think with their lower body." Hinata rolled her eyes at Rog. Since his partner said so, if Rog continued to be reserved, it would be a bit too pretentious. And strictly speaking, he was indeed interested in the elves of Alfheim. Among the 9 realms, except for the higher underworld that once imprisoned the goddess of death, only the elven kingdom Alfheim he hasn't been to. Therefore, it's normal for him to be interested in the elves. After all, curiosity is something that every living creature has. 300,000. After looking at the people bidding on the first floor, Rog directly raised the price to 300,000. Increasing the price by 10,000 to 20,000 was not in line with his style. Auctions were meant to be a bully. The magic array in the room transmitted his voice, causing the originally intense bidding war to pause for a moment. But soon, a competitor appeared on the first floor. 310,000. This was a man who was so fat that he needed to occupy the space of 2 people. With the physical fitness of Warner Protoss, being fat to this extent can be considered a talent. 400,000. Rog bid again. If he just raised the price to 300,000, it was just a bit overbearing. Therefore, there was only one meaning to his current bid. That is, this elf girl, he must have her. The fat competitor on the first floor looked up at the box where Rog was. He raised his right hand and put it down, and raised it again. After repeating several times, the fat competitor finally chose to give up. 400,000 magic crystal coins. This price was far beyond the normal price of an elf. However, this was also very normal. Not every elf could be like the elven girl on the stage, giving people a strong desire to protect her. In particular, the rugged collar on the elven girl's neck made the elven girl's delicate and pitiful appearance reach its limit. 400,000 going once. 400,000 going twice. 400,000. Just as the female auctioneer was about to drop the hammer, a female voice suddenly sounded from the box opposite Rog. 450,000 magic crystal coins. A woman? That's not right. It's just an elf girl. Why is a woman like you joining in the fun? Just as Rog was about to continue bidding, he suddenly stopped. Something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Although the female voice just now was hidden by the magic formation, Rog still felt that he had heard this voice somewhere before. Victigny or Weigelf. The only women he knew of from Warner Protoss were the 2 sisters. Could it be the 2 sisters? After thinking for a while, he finally made the decision to make a bid. However, before bidding, he adjusted his voice using a sound transmission magic array. 500,000. After reporting his new price, he turned off the sound transmission magic array. As long as the other party continued to raise the price, no matter how much, he would give up. The elf girl on the auction stage was indeed very attractive, but it wasn't enough to make him risk everything to bid for her. He didn't forget that there were still the sword in the stone, and the silver surfboard. Chapter 636. 500,000 going once. 500,000 going twice. The beautiful auctioneer on stage began the final countdown, while Rog calmly waited for the other party to raise the price. 500,000. At this point, the auctioneer glanced at the box on the second floor that had just raised the price. However, the box opposite Rog did not have any reaction. Going thrice sold. Clap! The auction mallet fell, and the elven girl's auction officially ended. This damn. The other party did not play by the rules. Rog did not expect that in the end, he would still win the elven girl, and spend an extra 100,000 magic crystal coins. Well done. Although the price had been raised, he did not take it to heart. Isn't it just 500,000 magic crystal coins? I don't care. In his psychic scroll, there were 1,300,000 magic crystal coins. However, this was not all of his assets. He did not exchange all of his Asgard magic crystals for magic crystal coins. He only exchanged a third of it. Therefore, his total assets now were about 5 million magic crystal coins. Although 500,000 for an elven girl was a little expensive, it was not to the extent that it made his heart ache. Moreover, other than these magic crystal coins and magic crystals, he had an even more valuable item. Divinity. To be precise, a third of the divinity. The Black Panther god Bastet's divinity was divided into 3 fragments, and he had 2. One of them was fed to Fenrir, while the other was kept in his psychic scroll. Although he did not have a special understanding of the god system that collected the power of faith, he speculated that the Black Panther god Bastet's divinity potential was between weak and intermediate divine power. Weak, intermediate, strong, supreme. This was the classification of divine power used by most god systems. Among them, strong divine power was roughly equivalent to the king of gods, while supreme divine power was equivalent to the creator gods. Although the Black Panther god Bastet had died under the joint attack of him and Professor Doom, the Black Panther god was still a god that had protected Wakanda for thousands of years. It was not particularly strange for his divinity to be at the level of weak or intermediate divine power. Not long after, the elven girl with a red necklace around her neck was sent to the room Rog was in. He took out 5 magic crystal cards that each represented 100,000 magic crystal coins, and handed them to the smiling waiter. He then took the chain from the waiter's hand. Bang! After transferring the chakra to the collar through the chain, he directly shattered the vile collar. Don't talk. Go to the side. I'll ask you if I have any questions. Glancing at the elven girl who was still in a state of shock, Rog once again set his gaze on the auction stage. Legendary magic sword, Hill Lord's heart, Medusa's eye, star adamantine. One by one, the items were put up for auction, and then one by one, they were taken away. Rog wasn't particularly interested in weapons, equipment, or magic materials. He didn't lack weapons now, and he wasn't interested in doing magic research, so these auction items didn't have any attraction to him. After waiting patiently for a while, the second item that he was interested in finally appeared. The sword in the stone. It was an ordinary-looking one-handed sword. He didn't know if the auction house was just playing with the atmosphere, or if they really got the sword and the stone together. The sword in the stone that appeared on the auction stage was inserted into a huge stone. Was this thing really the sword in the stone? Rog didn't know much about the sword in the stone. He only vaguely remembered that the sword in the stone was a legendary sword from the time of King Arthur. It was said that the person who pulled out the sword in the stone would have the strength of a multiverse. In the parallel universe, the sword in the stone had 2 owners. One was Iron Man Tawny, and the other was Captain Britain. After thinking for a few seconds, he used Chakra's perception, and began to sense the sword in the stone on the auction stage in detail. Although this action might cause the auction house to be dissatisfied, he didn't mind taking a small risk to determine whether the sword in the stone was the legendary treasure that had the strength of a multiverse in his memory. As long as Njord and Gulwig didn't join forces, he didn't fear anyone from the Warner Protoss. There were no energy fluctuations. After carefully sensing it inside and out, he didn't find any energy in the sword in the stone. Fake, this is definitely a fake. After confirming that there was no energy in the so-called sword in the stone, he immediately lost all interest. However, it was normal when he thought about it. If this was really the sword in the stone that had the strength of a multiverse, it wouldn't have appeared in the auction house. Although the people from Warner Protoss didn't know about other parallel universes like him, they definitely wouldn't be so stupid. In the end, the sword in the stone was bought by the mysterious guest in the box opposite Rog at the low price of 10,000 magic crystal coins. Sister, I told you he won't be fooled so easily. Don't forget he's an Earthling. He knows more about the sword in the stone than you and I do. The one who spoke was none other than Weigelf, one of the twins Thor. It doesn't matter if he wasn't fooled. Anyway, he has already paid an extra 100,000 magic crystal coins. It doesn't matter if the sword in the stone can't fool him, Victigny said indifferently, her light green eyes looking at the box where Rog was. Although Rog entered the King's City as a young Jiraiya, on the first day he entered the King's City, his traces were discovered by the sisters Victigny. To be precise, it was their mother, Gulwig, who noticed his arrival. Gulwig told the two of them, and then Weigelf, with her amazing intuition, made the final confirmation. Time passed little by little, and finally, the silver surfboard suspected to be the Silver Shadow Man was carried to the auction stage. When the mercury-like silver surfboard floated next to the auctioneer, Rog once again used chakra perception. Unlike the sword in the stone, this time, he perceived a terrifying energy in the silver surfboard. After perceiving this strange but powerful energy, he couldn't help but frown. This thing can't be real, can it? He was no stranger to the Silver Shadow Man, but because he had never seen the Silver Shadow Man, he couldn't be sure whether this energy was the cosmic energy given to the Silver Shadow Man by the planet Devourer. However, judging from the nature of the energy, this possibility was very high. The energy in the universe is very different from the energy in the planet. As long as you have a little perception, you can distinguish the difference between the two. In short, this is similar to the difference between water attribute energy and fire attribute energy. Although they both originate from the same source, their manifestations are completely different. Chapter 637. The nature of the energy was in line with the characteristics of cosmic energy, and the shape was also similar to Silver Shadow Man's surfboard. If he was not mistaken, this thing should be Silver Shadow Man's surfboard. Although he did not know why this surfboard, which was inseparable from Silver Shadow Man, appeared in Warnerheim, and it fell from the sky, this did not affect Rog's intention to buy it. Even if there was a mistake, this was still a very memorable souvenir. The starting price of this silver surfboard was also 10,000 magic crystal coins. However, because the auction house itself did not know the origin of this surfboard, the guests present did not seem particularly interested. This was normal. After all, Warnerheim was a country with a long history of civilization. This kind of item with the ability to fly, and can bring a certain degree of physical enhancement to the user. Although it was not common in Warnerheim, it was definitely not rare. If this thing did not fall from the sky and had some unknown mysteries, this surfboard would not even have the chance to be on the auction stage. In fact, when the auction house bought this surfboard, it only cost a few hundred magic crystal coins. After waiting for dozens of seconds, there was still no guest bidding. In order to avoid a failed bid, Rog took the initiative to bid. 15,000. This was a reasonable bid, there was nothing strange about it. 20,000. Sure enough, when Rog began to bid, the box that bid with him also began to bid. While using Chakra's perception to perceive the sword in the stone and the surfboard, he also perceived the situation in the opposite box, wanting to see who was sitting in the opposite box. However, it was a pity that his perception was directly blocked. What blocked his perception was not the magic array of the auction house, but the people sitting inside. Since the other party took the initiative to block his perception, Rog did not continue to make a fool of himself and directly ended his perception. So until now, he did not know that the people sitting in the opposite box were Victigny and her sister. 25,000. He raised the price again. 30,000. 35,000. It didn't take long for the price of the surfboard to reach 200,000 magic crystal coins. From these few price increases, Rog was 100% sure that the person on the other side was going against him. 300,000. He directly raised the price to 100,000. Don't you want to play? I'll play with you. Rog, who still had 4,500,000 magic crystal coins, wasn't worried at all that he would fail. 350,000. Sure enough, the other party increased the price, and the amount of increase was always half of his. 500,000. This was the second time he had bid 500,000 yuan tonight. If he had spent 500,000 magic crystal coins on the elven maiden, everyone present would only think of him as a lecherous man. Then, when he called out this price again, his label in the hearts of others became lecherous idiot. Spending 500,000 magic crystal coins on a strange-looking surfboard that didn't have any rare abilities was no longer a question of curiosity, but a blatant ignorance. Of course, this was only the evaluation of Rog by the guests. He would never think of himself as an ignorant lecherous idiot. Although he didn't know why the Silver Shadow Man's surfboard fell in Warnerheim, and why it only showed such an ordinary ability, one thing he could be sure of was that the surfboard was still in a normal state. It wasn't sealed, and there were no traces of damage on the inside. In that case, this surfboard was definitely worth 500,000 magic crystal coins. As for why the auction house didn't notice this, he didn't know, nor was he interested in knowing. Perhaps in the eyes of the auction house, this was just a strange prop with a lot of energy. It was just like the magic props made by alchemists and mages, which had a lot of energy but didn't have much use. Sister, are you going to continue to raise the price? This price is already seriously high, and he may give up at any time. Although she was the famous twin Thor in Warnerheim, and the daughter of the supreme goddess Gerwig, 500,000 magic crystal coins was not a small amount for them. It's not that they can't afford 500,000 magic crystal coins, but it's still a bit wasteful to spend 500,000 magic crystal coins on an unknown surfboard. One more time, if he wants it, then give it to him, Victigny said indifferently. Then she gave her latest offer, 550,000. 600,000. Since this price has been called, Rog won't give up this surfboard no matter what. Just when he thought that he would raise the price at least a few more times, the opposite box directly gave up bidding. In the end, this surfboard suspected to be the Silver Shadow Man fell into the hands of Rog. After handing 6 magic crystal cards with a limit of 100,000 to the auction house attendant, he took the silver surfboard. He didn't intend to test the surfboard in the auction house. He threw the surfboard into the psychic scroll, then left the auction house with Hinata. As for the elf girl who hadn't spoken so far, she followed behind them without saying a word. Hotel suite. What's your name? Looking at the elf girl in front of him who wanted to eat the fruit on the table, but didn't dare to speak, Rog took the initiative to ask. Rosie. Forley Rosie. Good name. Although Rog doesn't know much about the elf culture of Alfheim, from the perspective of an earthling, this name is quite good. At least it matches Rosie's temperament and appearance. How did you get caught? Rog continued to ask. Space rift. When I was wandering in the forest of my family territory, I fell into a space rift, and then, speaking of this, Rosie looked like she was about to cry. For some reason, looking at Rosie's pitiful appearance, Rog suddenly had the urge to pinch her face and make her cry. It's like seeing a baby with a round face, and having the urge to make it cry. No, I can't be so evil. This girl looked like she was underage. Okay, I got it. From today on, you are this lady's servant, understand? After saying that, Rog pointed to Hinata who was sitting next to him, and got a supercilious look from her. Understood. I will be a reliable servant, Rosie said solemnly, but judging from her appearance, she shouldn't have any experience in this area. If he's not mistaken, Rosie's background shouldn't be very ordinary. Maybe she's an elf noble. But this doesn't matter. Since he bought her from the auction house, she is his personal property. After sending Hinata and Rosie away, Kuroto summoned the surfboard from the summon scroll. Chapter 638. The silver surfboard floated quietly in front of Rog, maintaining a distance of about 10 centimeters from the ground. Looking at the mercury-like surfboard, Rog did not hesitate and stood on it. The first feeling when he stepped on the surfboard was like stepping into a shallow puddle. Rog could clearly feel the slight fluctuations on the surface of the surfboard, and he could also feel the sturdiness under his feet. Just when he planned to control chakra to flow into the surfboard, the mercury-like liquid on the surface of the surfboard seemed to have a life of its own as it spread up his feet. Just when the mercury-like liquid was about to reach his instep, Rog immediately used chakra to stop the spread of the silver liquid. He had no interest in becoming a silver person like Silver Shadow Man. For someone like him who was obsessed with cleanliness, letting the silver liquid spread to his body was no different from jumping into the disgusting river of Ganges that was full of strange things. This kind of thing, forget about doing it, just thinking about it would give him goosebumps. However, what he didn't expect was that when he used chakra to stop the silver liquid from spreading, the silver liquid actually showed a clear resistance and spread up in a more aggressive way. Interesting. The silver liquid showed its dominance, but Rog was even more domineering than it. In the beginning, he planned to try to tame the surfboard in a gentler way, but now he changed his mind. With a thought, the vast ocean-like chakra in his body instantly became extremely active. In less than a second, the silver liquid was completely suppressed and turned from its initial liquid state to a solid state. When the surfboard under his feet no longer had the mercury-like flowing posture, he let his consciousness follow chakra into the surfboard. In Rog's perception, the energy in the surfboard was like a small universe, magnificent and boundless. After perceiving this scene, he was 100% sure that the surfboard under his feet was Silver Shadow Man's surfboard. This kind of high-level energy that is completely in line with the nature of cosmic energy is definitely not something that anyone can control. To be precise, it is not something that can be mastered by existences below the Heavenly Father level. In terms of energy level, this cosmic energy is only slightly inferior to the energy of Infinity Stone. After confirming this, it was not difficult to judge the authenticity of this surfboard. Only the planet Devourer or other existences of the same level can give such high-level cosmic energy to others. So the question is, why did the surfboard that was inseparable from Silver Shadow Man fall in Warnerheim? It's impossible that the planet Devourer targeted Warnerheim and then sent Silver Shadow Man to Warnerheim. More importantly, the silver surfboard appeared in Vanaheim. So where did the Silver Shadow Man go? After the knocking stopped, the person outside the door did not choose to directly break in, but inserted the key into the keyhole. But even so, Rog didn't stop the Shinra Tensei at any time. Whether it's breaking the door or opening the door, he intends to teach the uninvited guest outside the door an unforgettable lesson. Creak. The closed door of the room was pushed open. Shinra Tensei, just at the moment when Shinra Tensei was about to be released, he took the initiative to stop the flow of chakra. How could it be her? No, it should be. How could it be them? The people who opened the door were none other than Victigny and Weigelf in pale golden armor. Behind them was a small group of city guard soldiers. This is a bit awkward. Others may not be able to see through his disguise, but Weigelf can definitely see through it. Her astonishing intuition, which could be said to be able to read minds, was simply the natural enemy of the transformation technique. Long time no see. Victigny took the initiative to say hello, then sat on the sofa opposite Rog like a tomboy. Chapter 639. Long time no see. Looking at the impolite Victigny, Rog replied silently. Then he continued. I haven't seen you for a while and your strength has improved again. Without actively using chakra perception, he didn't notice that it was actually Victigny and Weigelf outside the door. In the past, this was something that was impossible to happen. Oh, I've been defeated by you twice, so I have to work hard. Vergatini raised her head and said. Obviously, she was very satisfied with the improvement of her strength. When Weigelf also sat on the sofa opposite Rog, the city guards who came with them silently closed the door. Boom. When the door was closed, Rog took the initiative to lift the effect of the transformation technique. In front of Victigny and her sister, it doesn't make any sense to continue the transformation technique. As soon as the white smoke of the transformation technique dissipated, Victigny asked, "What happened to your eyes?" Her memory of Rog is still the time when Rog had 3 Tomo Sharingan. Just like you, it's a change brought about by the improvement of my strength. As long as one wasn't blind, one could see that Rog's eyes were not symmetrical at all. Just when Victigny was about to say something, Hinata came out of the bedroom with Luoqi. Hinata first looked at Victigny and roguelike with a puzzled look, then looked at Rog who had lifted his transformation jutsu. Without any hesitation, Hinata also lifted the transformation jutsu's effect and changed back to her original appearance. Seeing Hinata use the same ability as Rog, Victigny frowned. After changing from a blonde with a proud figure to a relatively less fierce girl, Hinata showed a gentle smile, and then sat directly on the right side of Rog. "Dear, who are these 2 sisters? Why have I never seen you mention them?" "Hinata, you've changed." Listening to Hinata using a green tea tone that he had never used before, Roger unconsciously swallowed his saliva. This is Victigny, and this is Weigelf. They are the famous twins of Warner Protoss, Thor?" Rog pointed to Victigny. Just when he was about to introduce Hinata to Victigny and her sister, Hinata gently held his right hand, still maintaining the seemingly harmless smile on her face. "This is my girlfriend, Hinata." After struggling for a few seconds between the terms girlfriend, partner, wife, colleague, and business partner, Rog finally chose a relatively safe relationship. "Oh, so she's just a girlfriend. I thought Roger was already married." Victigny glanced at Hinata and said in a slightly exaggerated tone, "This development isn't very good." Looking at the current environment, Rog's mind appeared in Shiraba's mind. "No, I can't let things continue like this." Just when he was about to directly change the topic, Hinata spoke. "Rog, you've been in the capital for so long, but you didn't introduce your sister to me. You made me think that elder sister was really like what was written in those novels." After saying that, Hinata deliberately raised her right hand and shyly hammered Rog's shoulder. "Hiss, there's no need to use gentle fist." Hinata's gentle fist, chakra, entered Rog's shoulder and pierced several chakra points on his shoulder and right arm like red-hot iron needles. "It's all my fault," Rog said with a smile while enduring the pain. Rog can control his expression very well, but Victigny and Hinata don't have his composure. Especially after Hinata deliberately mentioned the novels, Victigny and Hinata's faces instantly turned red. As the heroines in the novels, how can they not know how those novels are written? Although they are female Thor, they are the most powerful group of women in the Warner Protoss. But even so, they have no way to completely eliminate the circulation of those damn novels. This was just like what a great person from China had said. "The people love to read and see, but you don't like it. Who do you think you are?" Although there are many gods in Warnerheim, there is number 404 God. And even if there is 404 God, it can't stop the people from liking it. "I didn't expect sister to be so sharp-tongued at such a young age." Victigny, who acted like a tough woman as soon as she entered the door, no longer hid her momentum at this time. In other words, she took the initiative to vent her amazing oppressive power. In front of Rog, Victigny was defeated. But it can't be denied that Victigny is an existence who has awakened her divine power. She is the female Thor in Warnerheim and a commander in the army. Her oppressive power, not to mention ordinary people, even many senior generals in the Warner Protoss can't stand it. Sister is old. It's inevitable that she will be more irritable. Hinata didn't take Victigny's oppressive power to heart, and also broke out her own momentum. Although she hasn't experienced many battles, don't forget that her ninjutsu talent is above Rog. If you want to use momentum to oppress her, not to mention Victigny, even Rog can't do it. Suddenly, the living room of the suite became a battlefield for Victigny and Hinata. Do you want to persuade your sister? Rog doesn't dare to stop Hinata now. Otherwise, Hinata won't let him have an easy time tonight. So he can only use magic to whisper to remind Weigelf, who is also blushing. Humph. Weigelf snorted with a nasal sound, then released her own momentum and joined Victigny's side. What the hell? It's endless. Just when Victigny joined forces to release their momentum, and tried to bully Hinata, Rog didn't continue to stand by and released his own momentum without reservation. Buzz. At the moment when Rog fully released his momentum, with the hotel as the center, all creatures within a few kilometers felt a palpitation, as if they were being stared at by an ancient beast. This kind of palpitation, as if facing a natural enemy, made most people tremble slightly involuntarily. Except for those who have enough strength, most people felt an inexplicable pressure of death. When it comes to momentum, Rog really has never been afraid of anyone. From the time he only knew the Flying Thunder God until now, he had seen all kinds of enemies. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't fight enemies who were far weaker than him, he would have completed the achievement of killing millions of people by now. When Rog's momentum also joined in, Victigny decisively took back their momentum and ended this meaningless competition. Chapter 640. When both Victigny and Weigelf retracted their momentum, Rog and Hinata also did the same. The atmosphere in the room finally returned to normal. Plop. The boring momentum competition was over, but things didn't end there. As the only normal person in the room, Rosie fell back uncontrollably after they finished their momentum competition, and her face showed uncontrollable fear. He actually forgot about this little girl. It wasn't until now that Rog remembered that he just bought an elf girl with little fighting power. Looking at the shivering Rosie, Rog cast a mind-calming spell on her, freeing the poor little girl from the fear that came from her life instincts. After calming down, Luoqi slowly stood up and said in a timid voice. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, Victigny interrupted her. Victigny stood up, stretched out her right hand, pointed at Hinata, who was trying to play the role of a green tea, and said fiercely, "I want to duel with you." What? Hearing Victigny's sudden duel proposal, both Rog and Hinata were taken aback. Not only did they not keep up with Victigny's train of thought, but even Weigelf showed a puzzled look. What's this? Is she going against Hinata? Just when Rog was about to stop Victigny, Hinata, who had been maintaining her green tea smile, stood up and said in an unquestionable tone, "I accept your duel." After seeing Hinata's rare serious look, Rog knew that there was no way to be kind tonight. Although Hinata usually has a gentle and lovely appearance, like a caring big sister next door, only Rog, who has been in contact with Hinata for a long time, knows how decisive she can be when she's serious. Let's put it this way, when Hinata says that he can't rest, even as the fourth Hokage, Rog doesn't dare to disobey her order and secretly rest. Good. Don't cry later. Don't blame Big Sister for being too heavy-handed. Victigny didn't expect that Hinata would actually accept her duel proposal, and a look of confidence appeared on her face. Looking at Victigny and Hinata, who were completely at each other's throats, Rog shook his head helplessly. A duel is a duel. The sooner it's over, the sooner it's over. Otherwise, there would be no end to this matter. Although it's late at night, under the arrangement of Victigny, they successfully got the permission to use of the Colosseum. Roger did not follow the three of them into the arena that looked similar to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. He said slowly, "I'll wait for you outside." "Don't worry, I won't bully your girlfriend." Victigny raised her eyebrows and said to Roger, "I'll be back soon," Hinata said with a smile. When the three of them disappeared from the entrance of the arena, Roger jumped on Fenrir's back. Gua gua, because of the effect of the transformation technique, Fenrir's wolf howl turned into a toad's cry. However, whether it was a wolf howl or a toad, Rog couldn't understand it. Lying on the back of Fenrir, who had transformed into a red toad, Rog looked up at the moon in the night sky, which was different from the one on Earth. The moon on Earth is bright white. The moon in Warnerheim is the so-called blood moon, and the moonlight will constantly change between crimson and blood red with the change of date. Not long after, there was a fierce thunder sound in the Colosseum. Just by listening to the sound, Rog couldn't tell whether it was Victigny's attack or Hinata's attack. Although Victigny awakened the lightning god's power, Hinata is also good at lightning release. To some extent, Hinata is like a weakened version of Rog. Except for the lack of Sharingan, Mokuton, Rinnegan and other Kekkei Genkai, Hinata is not much different from Rog. In terms of the mastery and development of ninjutsu, Hinata is even stronger than Rog. The battle in the Colosseum didn't last long. After about 10 minutes, the three reappeared in front of Rog. Looking at Hinata and Vigtigny, who didn't have any injuries, Rog didn't ask about the result of the duel. He directly said goodbye to the two sisters and returned to the tavern with Hinata and Fenrir. Sitting on Fenrir's back, Hinata leaned her head on Rog's shoulder and said in a normal tone, "Aren't you curious about the result of our duel?" "There's nothing to be curious about. When you accepted the duel, I knew that the winner would be you." "Why?" "She's the famous female Thor, okay. Others don't know you, but don't I know you? She's indeed a female Thor, but you're also a ninja. You don't do things that you're not sure about. Moreover, you're someone who was personally guided by me. I know very well what kind of strength you have." Rog hugged Hinata's slender waist and said slowly, "Vigtigny's strength is indeed good, but unfortunately, her opponent is Hinata, so there's no need to think about the final result. Actually, she's also quite good, but a little silly." After hearing Hinata's description of silly, Rog smiled helplessly. Silly is not a good word, but Rog knows Hinata very well. From Hinata's point of view, this is a pretty good evaluation. At least it proves that Hinata recognizes Vigtigny. Yes, it's recognition. If it's not someone recognized by Hinata, she won't give such a silly evaluation. And she won't even make an evaluation. She will only silently label her as a waste or garbage in her heart. After the episode of Vigtigny, the night finally passed. Because of the appearance of Vigtigny and her sister, Rog also temporarily dispelled the idea of testing the silver surfboard, and decided to return to Konoha and slowly study this surfboard. The next morning, when Rog and Hinata had just tasted the specialty breakfast of Warnerheim, Vigtigny appeared in front of them again. "My mother wants to see you." "No problem." Vigtigny's mother, Gerwig, is not an ordinary person. In the eyes of the outside world, Gerwig is the most powerful goddess in Warnerheim, second only to the existence of the god King Njord. Of course, this is only the view of ordinary people. Whether it's Njord or Gerwig, neither has admitted this. However, Rog has a completely different view. Chapter 641. Compared to the divine King Njord, Gulweg did not have many illustrious achievements, and she rarely appeared in the outside world. But it would be too arbitrary to conclude that she was weaker than Njord based on this alone. The first time he came to Warnerheim, Rog had fought with Njord. At that time he had just mastered Sage Mode, and was far inferior to now. But in that fight, he did not feel a huge gap in strength from Njord that he could not resist. How should he put it? At that time, it was indeed unlikely that he could defeat Njord, but he could also guarantee that he had more than a 70% chance of leaving alive, and not being seriously injured. As the divine king of Warnerheim, Njord could not be said to be weak. But compared to an existence like Odin, Njord, a divine father-level existence, seemed a little unworthy of the name. In fact, until now, Rog still doubted whether Njord had the strength of a divine father. In any case, from that fight he did not feel that Njord was a divine father. Especially after he had the strength of a divine father, his doubts grew stronger and stronger. Combining his own actual situation and the situation of the last fight, he speculated that Njord should be about the same as himself, at the peak of the divine father level, only half a step away from the divine father level. The peak of the divine father level seemed to be only half a step away from the divine father level. But in fact, the two were completely different existences. So the question was, if Njord did not have the strength of a divine father, how did Warnerheim resist Odin's army back then? Don't say that Odin deliberately let Warnerheim go, allowing Warnerheim to maintain its independence. Odin was not the benevolent divine king that he was later when he fought in the Nine Lands. If he was not sure that he could not completely conquer Warnerheim, Odin would never have made the decision to only station troops in Warnerheim without interfering in the specific internal affairs of Warnerheim. Therefore, if Rog guessed correctly, the reason why Odin made this concession was because of Gulwig. He even had a very gossipy idea. Did something happen between Odin and Gulweg? Let's put it this way. Odin's biological son, Thor, awakened the divine power of thunder, and Gullwig's twin daughters also awakened the divine power of thunder. What was even stranger was that he had never heard of Gullwig's husband. Even the nobles in the Warner Protoss didn't know about it, let alone him. Therefore, he couldn't be blamed for having some inappropriate associations. Speaking of Gullwig's strength, judging from the awakened divine power of Victigny and her current strength, Gullwig's strength is definitely not too weak, and may even be stronger than Njord. At least from the perspective of the strength of her descendants, that's the case. The three Storm brothers are direct descendants of Njord, but in terms of strength, they are completely inferior to Victigny and her sister. Unlike ordinary creatures, the strength of the gods themselves directly determines the potential of their descendants. So from this point of view, Gullwig's strength may be above Njord. It's even possible that Gullwig is the divine father that allowed Warnerheim to maintain its independence. Of course, all of this is just Rog's guess. Whether Gullwig is a divine father or not, he can only confirm it after meeting her. Under the leadership of Victigny, Rog boarded the carriage to Gullwig's palace. He didn't bring Hinata and Fenrir. In fact, Gullwig only invited him alone. On the way to the palace, Victigny maintained a rare state of silence. He did not ask Logue any questions, nor did he explain anything to him. In this silent atmosphere, the carriage slowly drove into Gullwig's palace. Victigny didn't take Rog to see Gullwig, but left the job of guiding him to the palace maids. The moment he entered Gullwig's palace, Rog realized what is called extravagance. He can be regarded as a person who has seen big scenes, but after seeing Gullwig's palace, he couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Gullwig's palace is not decorated magnificently, but Rog can see that from the beginning of the palace gate. The interior of the palace is all used with precious materials in Warnerheim. Even the load-bearing pillars of the palace are enchanted materials that are worth more than gold. Simply put, Gullwig's palace was like a building built with countless magic arrays. If he is not mistaken, even the floor of the palace is enchanted with several magic. Dustless technique, cleaning technique, durability improvement. After sitting in this not particularly large main hall, and waiting for more than 10 minutes, Rog finally saw the most famous and powerful goddess in Warnerheim, Gullwig. "Greetings, Your Royal Highness." Rog didn't salute, but nodded slightly. It's their business if others want to salute Gullwig. Anyway, he doesn't have such a habit. Not to mention Gullwig, even when he saw Ancient One, he just nodded his head in greeting. "You are the fourth Hokage, right? You are really talented." Gullwig, wearing a white dress and a few simple jewelry, looked at him seriously, and then sat on the main seat. "Your Royal Highness is overpraising me." Since Gullwig entered the main hall of the cave, he has begun to perceive Gullwig's strength. Although he was not presumptuous enough to directly use chakra perception to perceive seriously, he tried his best to perceive the aura that Gullwig might leak out. But soon, he found out that he was thinking too much. Without using chakra perception, he couldn't feel any energy fluctuations from Gullwig's body. If you only observe with your eyes, Gullwig gives people the feeling that she is a well-maintained noble woman, the kind that has no strength to truss a chicken. If your strength is overpraising, then the young people in Warnerheim are not even qualified. Gullwig said with an impeccable smile and tone. "Well, I don't know what Your Royal Highness is looking for me today." Rog directly changed the question, trying to take back the initiative of the exchange. But it was apparent that Gullwig didn't intend to let him succeed so easily. She said something that he didn't expect. "What do you think of Victigny and Weigelf? If you had to choose one of them to be your wife, who would you choose?" Did I just miss any information? How did it suddenly become this topic? That they are both very good. Figure, appearance, strength, background, are impeccable. That you're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.